Chapter 1377, Demanding Blood in the Southern Mountain. 4. Su Zian hadn't expected that an insignificant housekeeper under Prince Jean would dare to give him the cold shoulder, and his anger couldn't help but soar. Your dog eyes need to be lowered to look at me. There was not a trace of emotion on housekeeper Li's ice-cold face. If he didn't know of Master's attitude, he would have already shut all these annoying people outside the door long ago. Only little Tsitsi hadn't returned. It was also sufficient to see Master's attitude. Su Zian's anger in his heart became even deeper. He was actually looked down upon by an insignificant housekeeper. Time passed little by little, very quickly. An hour had slipped away. Only at this moment did little Tsitsi slowly come out. He indifferently glanced at Su Zian and only said 2 words, "Come, please." Su Zian, who had become impatient from waiting, snorted heavily, flinging his sleeve as he went in. He had already flown into a rage out of humiliation. At this moment, his anger was even more extreme. Front hall. Su Luo calmly sat there. The moment Su Zian entered, he saw Su Luo leisurely half reclining and half sitting on the imperial tutor's chair. The little divine dragon was in her lap, and there was another little fox with a pure white fur coat. This little fox had quite a few tails: 1 tail, 2 tail, 3 tail, 9 tails? That's not right. His eyes certainly must be blurred. Su Zian couldn't help but to count it once again. After he finished counting, his entire being didn't feel good. 9 tails. It was actually a little 9-tailed spirit fox. This simply made people's heart beat quickly. Su Zian, with great difficulty, restrained the greediness that sprang up in his heart. His gaze indifferently swept toward Su Luo, but when his line of sight fell on Su Luo's face, for a moment, his whole body stiffened, as if he had seen a ghost. Who are you?" Su Zian looked at the Su Luo before his eyes with disbelief. The little divine dragon was Su Luo's spirit pet. He only liked to leap up and down on Su Luo's body, so without a doubt, the person in front of his eyes was Su Luo. But her face! How could her face change to be so beautiful? The original shape of her facial features almost didn't change now. It looked as if it had been delicately carved, cut, and polished. Every place was all exquisitely perfect to the extreme. Compared to her, how could the Jade Lake Fairy's jade-like beauty be even considered beautiful? Su Qing and Su Wan's appearance wasn't even worthy of becoming her servant. It was only 2 years' time. How could she have changed so quickly? Who do you think I am? Su Luo, on one hand, leisurely teased the little divine dragon by tickling his chin, while on the other hand, she carelessly spoke. Luo, it seems that you've been doing pretty good these past 2 years. Not only had her appearance become the most beautiful under the heavens, even her cultivation had advanced to a place that was hard for him to even hope for. In her hands, there was even the 9-tailed spirit fox from the legends that could use the change spirit technique. Envy Su Zian was deeply envious. Su Luo, from high up looking down, aimed a glance at him disdainfully out of the corner of her eye. The smile at the corner of her mouth was indifferent, like a stranger. If not for your excellency expelling me from the Su residence, such good days, I still really wouldn't be able to have. When she mentioned the matter of being expelled from Su Manor, there was no anger, not even ridicule. There was only an unfamiliarity belonging to a stranger. After Su Zian realized this point, his heart suddenly shook. He had a very bad feeling. If Su Luo had angrily kicked up a racket or mocked and ridiculed him, in that case, it showed she still cared about the Su Manor, still cared about him, this father. However, so apathetic like this, just like a nodding acquaintance that hadn't been in contact for many years, this made Su Zian somewhat panic-stricken. Su Zian sat without being asked, with a stiff face. He assumed a fatherly attitude. That was only a misunderstanding. Now the misunderstanding is already clarified. You can return to the Su Manor at any time. Su Luo held the little divine dragon and petted the hair on his body. Occasionally, she found the time to glance at Su Zian. I can return to the Su Manor at any time? Chapter 1378, Demanding Blood in the Southern Mountain. 5. Of course, Su Zian waved his hand and urged with a cold voice. Outside is not as good as home. Tidy up your things and return with father to the manor. Su Luo did not give face and directly laughed. This laugh was just like a slap that was heavily flung on this thick-skinned old face of Su Zian. Su Zian's heart was immediately angry. Two flames burned in his eyes. Laugh? She actually laughed so unrestrainedly. Impudent! Su Zian suddenly slapped the table and stood up. What are you laughing at? Su Zian thought of the matter before when he expelled Su Luo from the manor, and his complexion swelled even redder. He truly flew into a rage out of humiliation. Su Luo stopped laughing with great difficulty. General actually asked me why I laughed? These words you actually can also ask out loud? Su Luo. Su Zian was furious. Su Luo's breathing was somewhat unstable because just now she laughed in too lively a manner. She calmed down with great difficulty. What? Is there still something else? Return home with me. Su Zian extended his hand and was about to pull Su Luo. But it was very obvious the furious Su Zian had lost his rationality. He completely forgot that now Su Luo was already at the 8th rank. Even more, he forgot the fact that Su Luo had two powerful spirit pets. Whoa, whoa! The little divine dragon directly bit towards Su Zian's hand. Fortunately, Su Zian had quick reflexes and quickly pulled back his hand. Otherwise, this hand of his would be gone. Su Luo, you dare to kill your own father? Su Zian was extremely angry. Su Luo tenderly held the little divine dragon, slowly and deliberately. She swept a glance at his somewhat messy fur. In a downplaying tone, she said, Kill my own father? Just based on you. Worthy to be my father? Grandmaster Rong Yun, the master of Purgatory City, there was still that sly, mysterious big boss. Which of them didn't want to be her dad? Compared to these major characters, he, Su Zian, couldn't even be regarded as an aunt. Actually dared to boast shamelessly in front of her to call himself dad. Su Luo, are you really just this indifferent and heartless? Su Zian severely glared at Su Luo and said in a rage, At that time, Dad misunderstood you, so I expelled you from the family. But it's been 2 years, you must have had enough of being angry, right? How could biological father and daughter still have hatred from the previous day? Su Luo speechlessly shook her head. Su Zian, you really take yourself as too important. You actually dare to directly call father by name? Just based on this point, you deserve to die. Su Zian said menacingly. Su Luo used a looking at a lunatic expression to gaze at Su Zian. He was too into the play, only so what if he acted so realistically? In any case, at that time, she had already been stricken off from the genealogy. You leave, only in the future, don't call yourself my father again, if you want this life. Su Luo waved her hand, somewhat downhearted, to show him out the door. At that time, Master, in order to let her rightfully enter Su Manor, Su Zian's infant girl that hadn't opened her eyes yet was sacrificed. Going by feeling and reason, she owed that infant girl, so this time she saved Su Zian once. After all, if this was heard by that one in Purgatory City, Su Zian would absolutely die without a burial site. Because this represented the profaning of the goddess Yanhua. Su Zian completely didn't know Su Luo was doing it for his own good. Seeing Su Luo deny it to the end, his eyes revealed an ominous glint. Su Luo, you have grown up now. You are extraordinary now, so you cast aside Su Manor. This is merely beautiful thinking. Impossibly stupid. These 2 words were Su Luo's evaluation of Su Zian. Su Zian was angry to the extreme. His complexion was ashen, and he pointed at Su Luo with a shaking finger. You actually dare to speak like this to me? Chapter 1379, Demanding Blood in the Southern Mountains 6. So what? Su Luo smilingly looked at him. Can you beat me? Or kill me? Su Zian, I kindly advise you a sentence. You must by all means not provoke me. Otherwise, your Su Manor will disappear. Actually dared to threaten him this, father? Su Luo, you believe now no one can control you? Your grandfather has already exited closed-door cultivation. You wait for us." Finished speaking these words, Su Zian, in spitting anger, flung his sleeves and left. If he hadn't left, he feared he would simply be infuriated to death by Su Luo. Seeing Su Zian angrily leave, a touch of interest flashed through Su Luo's eyes. Elder ancestor Su had exited closed-door cultivation? If he could let Su Zian so confidently come over, presumably his strength wasn't bad, right? But so what? In any case, it was absolutely impossible she would return to Su Manor. After Su Zian returned to the manor, he directly hurried to the rear courtyard. The rear courtyard was very quiet. Only elder ancestor Su resided there. At this moment, twilight had arrived, and elder ancestor Su stood beside a blooming jasper tree, lifting his eyes to gaze at the distant blood-colored remaining sun. His brows were tightly pursed. After getting permission, Su Zian pushed open the door and entered. "You didn't accomplish the matters?" Elder ancestor Su's indifferent gaze swept over Su Zian's body. Although Su Zian did his utmost to restrain the anger in his heart, anger still remained. Elder ancestor Su, at such strength, his perceptivity was also very sharp, so with one sweep of his gaze, he understood everything. "I failed to live up to father's great trust." Su Zian bent his waist. His expression was disappointed. That girl relies on His Highness Prince Jin's support. Her own strength has also risen dramatically. Now, she simply does not have Su Manor in her eyes. Not only that, but she also said, what else did she say? Elder ancestor Su's brows tightly pursed. Su Zian's gaze flashed, finally appearing to have made a firm resolution. He said while gnashing his teeth. She said, "If I still dare to call myself her father, in the future, Su Manor would disappear." Impudent. Elder ancestor Su immediately became angry. As he raised his hand, the blooming jasper tree before his eyes, in a flash, burst into dregs. Finally, it changed into fine powder and sprinkled on the ground. There was a strange quietness all around. Elder ancestor Su gave off the pressure of a powerful expert, and the pressure nearly choked Su Zian. Su Zian sucked in a deep breath and continued to speak. "Father, I'm only afraid that Su Luo won't return to the family. Even if her person returns, her heart won't be loyal. So long as her body returns, then we have succeeded the rest." Humph, humph. Greed and scheming flitted past elder ancestor Su's eyes. "Oh, that's right, father. Su Luo actually still has a little nine-tailed spirit fox in her hands." Su Zian recalled that little nine-tailed fox and immediately told elder ancestor Su the information. "What did you say? A little nine-tailed spirit fox?" Elder ancestor Su was suddenly stunned. Yes, this son counted several times indeed. It really was a little nine-tailed fox. Su Zian was extremely certain. This is a treasure, a huge treasure, The little nine-tailed spirit fox's heart blood for him was a great supplement, a great supplement. Elder ancestor Su's eyes suddenly brightened, then suddenly darkened. It was difficult to hide the excited rays of light in them. "Father!" Su Zian saw elder ancestor Su's heart was moved, and his heart immediately became excited. As long as they obtained the treasure, when father ate the meat, he could at least drink some soup. Su Luo is now staying at the southern mountains? Only after a long time did elder ancestor Su slowly start to talk. Yes, her relationship with Prince Jin is very close, just lacking the last step of getting married. Su Zian confirmed. Suddenly, the corner of elder ancestor Su's mouth raised in a cold and strange smile, and he nodded his head. "Good, very good. Father." Su Zian was extremely curious. He didn't know what method elder ancestor had thought up. "You withdraw for the time being. Wait for the good news, Elder ancestor Su waved his hand and directly drove Su Zian out. Chapter 1380 Strange Jade Pendant 1. Elder ancestor Su then entered the palace that same evening. When Emperor Jing knew elder ancestor Su was now already at the 8th rank, his eye sockets opened wide as he stared with huge eyes. Is this true? Elder Ancestor Su, perfectly composed, sat upright on the red sandalwood chair. His serious appearance carried a trace of the indifference of a strong expert, as he indifferently nodded his head. Good, simply really good. Emperor Jing excitedly slapped the dragon chair heavily. Not long after was the battle for power between the four nations. This time, the battle for power was held precisely in the imperial capital of Eastern Ling. Not to mention who lost and who won, just the people that will come. Each and every one was an expert that they couldn't be looked down upon. If they created some movement in the imperial capital, then that would be disastrous. But what made Emperor Jing embarrassed was there weren't that many strong experts that could stand out from the Nangong family. Now, Elder Ancestor Su broke through at such a crucial moment. How could Emperor Jing not be happy? But at this moment, Elder Ancestor Su was still arranging his family, holding a cup of fragrant tea, faintly tasting it. His face seemed profoundly mysterious. Emperor Jing had been emperor for many years. How could he not know that he had a request he wanted to mention? But an expert at the 8th rank in the imperial capital was already a transcendent existence. Recalling originally, Li Yaoxiang with his 8th rank strength and the entire imperial capital all couldn't help but let him have his way and freely be arrogant and despotic. This time's battle for power competition between the four countries. Don't know if Elder Ancestor Su has an interest or not. Emperor Jing was also a crafty fox. Whether I have interest or not, at present, it's hard to say. Elder Ancestor Su saw the topic had returned, and his gaze indifferently shot towards Emperor Jing. Oh, why do you say this? Could it be Elder Ancestor Su has some hidden trouble that's hard to mention? Emperor Jing's brain quickly turned. Elder Ancestor Su fiddled with the teacup, eyes gazing out the window. He seemed to have floated very far, and his voice carried a thread of loneliness. Alas, every family goes through a difficult time. Let's not talk about this matter. Emperor Jing originally didn't have a good grasp. Now, his heart immediately understood clearly. Su Luo. It must be Su Luo, that girl. Thinking of Su Luo, Emperor Jing's heart was especially complicated. At that time, his unfilial son had repeatedly warned that he must not provoke Su Luo. He must not break Su Luo and him up. He had made a solemn vow that soon, Su Luo would soar and no one could stop her. At that time, Emperor Jing didn't believe it. He had racked his brains to break them up and to marry in that Fairy of the Jade Lakesley family. The result? Emperor Jing wished he could ruthlessly hammer his own head. If Elder Ancestor Su's words, do not hesitate to speak. If I can help, will not spare any effort to do my utmost. Emperor Jing stopped the thoughts in his head and the memories rushing forth from his heart. He pretended to be indifferent on the surface without a single wave. When Elder Ancestor Su entered the palace, he was planning on using Emperor Jing. Seeing Emperor Jing take the bite, he then shook his head, pretending to be worried. It's Su Zian, that unfilial son. Originally, the Jade Lakesley family, relying on force to bully others, pressured the Su family. He actually really expelled Su Luo, that girl, out of the Su manor. Don't know how that girl is doing, alas. These words from Elder Ancestor Su scolded Su Zian on the surface. In reality, he was actually avoiding the important matter and dwelling on the trivial. He completely pushed Su Zian's responsibility off cleanly and let the Jade Lakesley family carry all the black pots. Now, the Jade Lakesley family's elder ancestor wasn't present. The third generation had also declined. Li Yaoxiang had also died. The Jade Lakesley family already appeared to have declined. Elder Ancestor Su, after having been promoted to a higher rank, had complete self-confidence. He also didn't have that kind of reverence for the Jade Lakesley family from before. Hearing Elder Ancestor Su's words, Emperor Jing immediately understood 70%. It seemed that this old fogey wanted to take Su Luo, that girl, back into Su Manor and make her recognize her ancestors again. These words from Elder Ancestor Su were really interesting. Originally, when they expelled Su Luo out of the manor, the Su Manor was vicious and merciless. Now that they saw that she had grown, they began to show concern. Chapter 1381. Strange Jade Pendant 2. Emperor Jing knitted his brows and sighed. I heard Su Luo, that girl, came back. She actually came back. Elder Ancestor, Su, opened his eyes wide. Continue to pretend. Emperor Jing was very disdainful of Elder Ancestor Su in his heart, but on the surface, he still accompanied with a smile and an amiable tone. Yes, I heard she returned a few days ago. Now they are living in the Southern Mountains. Oh, isn't the Southern Mountains His Highness Prince Jin's property? Elder Ancestor Su pretended he didn't know. In any case, he had just exited closed-door cultivation, not knowing those trivial matters was to be expected. Pretend okay, continue to pretend okay. Emperor Jing harbored hatred in his heart. Yet on the surface he still spoke with a face full of smiles. Elder Ancestor, Su may not know your family Su Luo and Luyan are harmonious. Their feelings are deep and their intentions serious. Now, they're already at the stage of discussing marriage. Elder Ancestor Su had laid the work for so long. Wasn't he just waiting for these words? Elder Ancestor Su, with a stiff face, angrily said, since they are already discussing marriage, then properly talk, properly discuss. They still haven't married and are already living together like this. Whatever's next? Emperor Jing didn't know Elder Ancestor Su's tale would show so quickly. He sniggered in his heart, yet on the surface, he also wrinkled his brows. This is, alas, His Highness Prince Jin is determined to marry my family's Luo girl. Elder Ancestor Su's eyes went vertical, carrying a trace of cold intention. She still hadn't returned and recognized her ancestor yet, and you're calling my family's Luo girl like this. Emperor Jing recalled that day Su Zian, in the main hall, was determined to expel Su Luo from the manor. This contrast, he couldn't help but somewhat rejoice in other people's misfortune. This, you have to ask Liu Yun's intention. Frankly speaking, I am also unable to be in charge of this matter. Emperor Jing completely pushed his own responsibility cleanly away. So to speak, it was that girl who was determined to marry Prince Jin? Elder Ancestor Su switched his wording. This, recalling the day Nangong Luyan protected that smelly girl like the apple of his eye. Emperor Jing thus knew. It was absolutely that foolish son of his that loved the other person a bit more. Your Majesty, please give my message. Elder Ancestor Su stood up, unperturbed. His voice was long and dragged on. If Prince Jin really wants to marry that girl, then he has to do so rightly and properly. The etiquette that is needed must not lack a bit. My words end here. I'll take my leave. Finished handing over this sentence, not waiting for Emperor Jing to reply. Elder Ancestor Su left without consulting anyone. This, Emperor Jing felt embarrassed. Just now, Elder Ancestor Su's meaning was very clear. He was threatening If Su Luo was determined to marry Liu Yun, she must first return to Su Manor. Only entering Su Manor would those etiquette be done bit by bit. However, would Su Luo return? Emperor Jing recalled from that day the cold, arrogant complexion that was no different from Nangong Liu Yun's, and he slowly sighed. This time, Elder Ancestor Su really gave him a very big and difficult problem. If he couldn't succeed in this matter, this time, the power competition between the four countries, he would certainly freely look for an excuse to send him, this emperor, away. That night, Emperor Jing lied down in the palace alone. He tossed and turned, yet couldn't sleep. In his mind, Elder Ancestor Su's words flipped over and over. At midnight, he again threw on some clothes. With jolting buttocks, he ran to the Empress's place. The Empress, toward Su Luo and Nangong Luyan, naturally fumed with rage between gritted teeth. What suggestion could she possibly give Emperor Jing? How could she not add more medicine? Your Majesty, there are rumors outside saying Su Luo is already at the 8th rank in strength. Don't know if it's true or false. The Empress laughed with puff cheese sounds. Emperor Jing waved his hand, jittery. That day when she left Eastern Ling, she was only at the 4th rank at best. In 2 short years, how could she possibly reach the 8th rank? These rumors you also believe in? In any case, Emperor Jing didn't believe them. Chapter 1382, Strange Jade Pendant 3. The Empress naturally also didn't believe it, because such a fast promotion speed, even Nangong Luyin was incapable of doing so, to say nothing of Su Luo, who carried the name of being a waste material. I heard they returned several days ago. Why haven't they come to pay respects to your majesty? The Empress frowned. No matter how powerful His Highness Prince Jin's strength is, he is still your son, when all is said and done. This I'm medicines that were applied. Emperor Jing just berated her on the spot. What do you understand, woman? Don't talk rubbish. He certainly went to cultivate, otherwise. How could he not enter the palace? He may have said that, but that doubt had long ago unwittingly been buried. As for whether or not the root would germinate, one would have to see in the future. The second day, Emperor Jing waited and still didn't see Nangong Luyin. The third day, it was also like this. The fourth day, the Empress and the Crown Prince encircled at the irritable Emperor Jing's side. She again applied medicinal eye drops imperceptibly. Emperor Jing slapped the table in a rage and bellowed. People come, go to the southern mountains, and call over Nangong Luyin and Su Luo for me. If the old tiger didn't show its power, they might really believe he was an ill cato. He had returned to Eastern Ling for so long. Don't speak of paying respects. He didn't even give a greeting. Did he, Nangong Luyin, believe the imperial capital was a hotel? Did he still have this father in his eyes? Was it because he had become strong, so he didn't put anyone in his eyes? The more Emperor Jing thought, the angrier he became. Southern Mountains. This day, as usual, after Su Luo finished her cultivation, she then leisurely lied down on the grass turf to rest. Her consciousness inadvertently entered her space. Seeing everything in her space, she suddenly felt somewhat annoyed. In the period before, since she was continuously being chased to be killed, so she hadn't properly sorted out her space. As a result, it seemed extremely chaotic inside. After all, at that time, she looted Central Palace's treasure storage pavilion. How could things not be in a mess? Taking advantage that she had time now, Su Luo began to sort out the stuff in her space. She packed them properly by arranging them into categories. Actually, she didn't need to work hard. She only needed to sat in place, with her eyes tightly closed, controlling these treasures with her consciousness. Afterwards, she let them automatically fly to the place they were to be placed, and then it's done. Unwittingly, the stuff had already more or less been sorted out. Seeing the neat, clean, and tidy appearance before her eyes, the corner of her mouth hooked into a satisfied smile. Suddenly, her smile stiffened at the corner of her mouth. She remembered that originally, at the Central Palace's treasure storage pavilion, she took several treasure swords. Although those several swords hadn't given birth to a sword spirit like Qi Shao's sword and the Chengying sword, they were still exceptionally difficult to find treasure swords. Su Luo originally wanted to divide these several swords to Beichen Ying and them, but just now, when she arranged things, she didn't see those swords. Could it be she was mistaken? Su Luo closed her eyes, and her consciousness started to spread to her entire space. However, she had combed through her space inside and out, and there still wasn't a trace of them. Huh? Su Luo's eyes suddenly shone. Su Luo bent down and picked up a jade pendant from the underbrush. This snow-white jade's color resembled water, gentle and transparent. When you held it in your hand, it gave people a kind of cozy feeling, as if they were bathed in spring wind, so much so that she even felt her spirit breath change. This jade pendant, its jade quality was absolutely good, but this wasn't what aroused Su Luo's attention. Through this jade pendant, Su Luo recalled a matter. Originally, when she was in the treasure storage pavilion, she saw a worn-out sword that was black with no light, but at that time, the little divine dragon nevertheless loved this sword very much. At that time, Su Luo was puzzled in her heart, but she didn't have the time to think and only stuffed it in with all the rest into her space. Afterwards, she was chased to kill all the way and completely forgot this matter thoroughly. Now, seeing this jade pendant, she remembered. Chapter 1383. strange jade pendant 4, because at that time, this jade pendant acted as the sword's tassel, and it was hanging on that worn-out, broken sword hilt. This jade pendant, it seemed very old, but from which specific ancient time, Su Luo couldn't think of clearly. Suddenly, Su Luo smiled, with Nangong Luyun present. Why should she ponder over it? Why not just ask him, this moving encyclopedia of knowledge, okay? Saying to do this, then she just did it. After Su Luo exited her space, she held the jade pendant and walked towards Nangong Luyun's room to look for him. After waiting for Nangong Luyun to finish cultivating, then Su Luo pushed the door open to enter. Are you a little bit better today? Su Luo saw Nangong Luyun's facial color was a bit better than before, and her mood also followed, starting to be more high-spirited. Nangong Luyun pulled her along to sit down on the soft couch. You already calculated the time before coming over? Afraid to disturb your cultivation, ah? Su Luo took the opportunity to sit at the side of his leg. But Nangong Luyun's long, slender but strong arm, with one move, and Su Luo, completely lacking the strength to resist, had her sat on his thigh. An ambiguous, fluid expression slipped through Nangong Luyun's eyes. His finger wandered over her back. Don't start. I need to talk to you about a serious matter, oh. Su Luo unhappily stopped his hand. And Nangong Luyun grunted. Suddenly, he used a kind of strange gaze to stare at Su Luo. This gaze watched her until Su Luo's heart became scared. Why are you using this kind of gaze to look at me? Su Luo couldn't conceal the surprise in her eyes. You. Nangong Luyun's hand extended out, and in one move, grabbed between Su Luo's thumb and forefinger. His movement was fast as lightning, and after Su Luo returned to her senses, he had already grabbed her hand. Hurts? Su Luo exhaled out a sound from the pain. Don't move. Nangong Luyun's face was rigid and had a never-before-seen seriousness and imposing atmosphere. Su Luo was extremely confused in her heart. In the end, what was going on? Nangong Luyun's behavior was too strange, right? Just now, his gaze was frighteningly unfamiliar. Thousands and tens of thousands of thoughts went through Su Luo's mind, but in this kind of juncture, she was afraid any sound she made would interrupt Nangong Luyun's train of thought. As a result, she sat there motionless to allow him to study her. It was after a cup of tea's time before Nangong Luyun released Su Luo, as if having a weight of his mind. This cup of tea's time for Su Luo seemed even longer than a year's time. Now, can you tell me what happened? Su Luo helplessly looked at him. His actions just now really scared her. On your body, are you wearing something strange? A trace of a perplexed expression flashed through Nangong Luyun's eyes. Strange thing? Don't have ah. Su Luo blinked her eyes innocently. I always hate to wear accessories. Moreover, I'm used to tossing things into my space, so it's convenient to make use of them. Just at this time, Su Luo twisted her body a bit. Thump, a piece of a round jade pendant fell out from Su Luo's sleeves. Su Luo's hand reached out to grab it, but Nangong Luyun's speed was faster than hers. That pair of slender, long and jade-like fingers picked up this jade pendant decorated with dragon design. This was something I found just now after tidying up my space. Su Luo saw Nangong Luyun looked at that jade pendant with a dazed expression, and she couldn't help but to open her mouth to explain. After quite a while, Nangong Luyun suddenly realized. So it turned out to be so. So it turned out to be what? He might have suddenly realized it, but there was still a miss facing him that was confused. Su Luo pinched Nangong Luyun's lean and strong hip. Stop keeping me in suspense, quickly say it ah. Nangong Luyun hugged Su Luo and asked, full of heartache, did I injure you just now? Su Luo extended a snow-white bright wrist. But now, the white area between her thumb and forefinger was bluish-purple. It looked like a horrible sight to see. Chapter 1384, Strange Jade Pendant 5. Nangong Luyun's eyes were full of distress and self-blame. Su Luo waved her hand, signaling that it didn't matter. It may look very serious, but in fact, it doesn't hurt a bit. Would you stop using the expression of looking at a waist to look at me, okay? At the very least, I'm at the 8th rank, An 8th rank expert, the Li Yaoxiang at that time, was at this level and nothing more. But just now, you were 100% a waist, A complicated expression appeared in Nangong Liuyun's beautiful eyes as he slowly spit out the truth. What? I changed into a waist again? Su Luo almost spit out a mouthful of water, nervously seizing herself up from head to toe. She didn't even forget to move her spirit force. It was when she was sure her cultivation in her body was still there, before she curiously asked, "Why? What happened?" Nangong Liuyun's hand gripped the jade pendant, then pulled Su Luo to walk with him. "Follow me." At this moment, Beichening just so happened to have hands clasped behind his back. A group of henchmen followed behind him. He glanced in all directions and walked over. That sloppy little appearance was the splitting image of the little evil tyrant in dramas, bringing a group of flunkies to stroll the street to snatch women from good families. This youngster couldn't stay still on Southern Mountain. On the second day they had arrived at Southern Mountain, he had already gone down the mountain. Now see, after he had finished playing, he once again came up the mountains to look for Nangong Luyun and her. Beichening, with one glance, saw Su Luo at the other end of the mountain. As for Nangong Luyun, at his current angle, he couldn't see him. At this moment, Beichening gave a smile that was more brilliant than sunlight, waving his hand and loudly called out a greeting. "Oh, I'm over here." Su Luo's face was full of black lines. Could she say that now? They were separated by 3 mountaintops distance, okay? Don't know what medicine Beichening ate. He ran over like the wind, and left those subordinates that were following him far, far away. Beichening's speed was very fast. In less than a cup of tea's time, he had leapt across the 3 mountaintops. He arrived in front of Su Luo, not breathing hard and not red in the face. His face was flushed, seemingly very excited. As expected, the next second, the childlike Beichening started to talk, dancing and gesticulating with joy. "You locked on top of the mountain all day, definitely don't know how lively the imperial capital is right now. That's what is called one person surging up like the tide, so crowded. Oh, that's right. Luo, aren't you short on money? Follow third older brother, and there will be meat to eat." With him being pleased with his own self, Beichening simply even changed the way he called himself. Normally, he would flatteringly call her sister-in-law. Now, being pleased with himself, he called himself older brother. Su Luo secretly smiled. She knew that besides Nangong Luyun being the second brother, the rest of the 3, their rankings were always indeterminate. Each and every one of them said they were third older brother. None of them wanted to become 4th and 5th brother. Although Su Luo was always curious why Nangong Luyun was second brother and not eldest brother. But this question no one answered her. Just when Beichening was slapping Su Luo's shoulder, promising to bring her to make a lot of money, suddenly, he felt his back go cold, an ice-cold breath enveloping him firmly. In this second, the air in the surroundings seemed to freeze. Bro, second brother, you are also here?" Beichening's mouth split open into a smile that was uglier than crying. Nangong Luyun's icy sword-like gaze shot towards Beichening's hand. In an instant, the hand Beichening placed on Su Luo's shoulder seemed to be drenched in boiling lava. In a conditioned reflex, it very quickly drew back. He gave several forced laughing sounds. "Ha! Hee, you're also here?" Now, Beichening wished he could chop off his 2 little paws. Touch what isn't good. He actually went and touched the treasure at the tip of Nangong Luyun's heart. Boohoo, really afraid of being beaten up. Chapter 1385, Strange Jade Pendant 6. In childhood, because he and Lan Xian, that fool, made a bet on who would first get some of second brother's hair. The result was that he took advantage of when second brother was at the peak of exhaustion from practice. Then he stealthily touched second brother's soft hair. Before he could pull off one strand of hair, the originally exhausted to the point of fainting second brother suddenly opened his bloodthirsty and icy eyes. The result was that he was chased to be killed for 3 days and 3 nights. Second brother, that beast, clearly could have just caught him by stretching out his hand, But he wouldn't Every time when he was almost caught by him, he would directly kick him in a parabolic arc. Then after, he would continue to chase okay. In the end, his boat was swollen for a full 3 months, and he couldn't sit down to eat Those 3 days created how big a trauma to the young little Baichen's heart Even now, it still cast a shadow. Nangong Luyun faintly swept a glance, and Baichen Ing, in a flash, jumped 3 steps away from Su Luo. Nangong Luyun's dark red, thin lips hooked into a ghost of a smile, his calm and rippleless eyes landing on Baichen Ying's body. His tone was light, but carried a strong emphasis that wouldn't allow dissent. Come here. Baichen Ing, this fool, subconsciously covered his little butt. His face was full of nervousness and being on guard. What do you want to do? It could clearly be seen how strong the shadow was from childhood. Su Luo watched this while being extremely curious. She poked Nangong Liuyun's arm. In the end, what did you do to him? Why would Baichen Ing, for no cause or reason, cover his butt? Could it be that Nangong Luyun did something bad to him, such as completely destroying his anus? Su Luo's pair of black as ink, quick-witted eyes whirled around, flickering with curiosity and intent to gossip. Nangong Luyun unhappily patted Su Luo's head. What is your little brain thinking of? Su Luo spit out her tongue. Some things cannot be said. Nangong Luyun speechlessly swept Su Luo a glance, the corner of his mouth twitching slightly. In the end, without much choice, he could only loosen his tone and beckon to Baichen Ing. Come here. It's not like I'm going to eat you. What do you want to do in the end? Baichen Ing wanted to cry, but lacked the tears. Truthfully speaking, now, the thing he wanted to do the most was to take to his heels and run. But if it was like this, the soft, fleshy part of his, but would just so happen to be exposed before Second Brother's eyes. Then, wouldn't he directly kick him flying? Based on Second Brother's current cultivation, maybe he would be kicked flying past 3 huge mountains. Baichen Ing looked at Su Luo with a cry for help. Su Luo shrugged her shoulders and spread open her hands, expressing she wanted to help, but it was difficult to help him. Baichen Ing looked at Nangong Luyun, full of grief. He dilly-dallied, as if walking to a noose, taking 1 step forward and 3 steps back. But in the end, he was still resigned to his fate and stopped in front of Nangong Luyun. Nangong Luyun looked at him as if looking at an idiot and didn't feel like arguing with him. He directly tossed over an object and instructed in an indifferent tone. Wear it. Wear it. Baichen Ying's hand held a jade pendant with dragon designs. His pretty huge eyes looked towards Nangong Luyun, full of puzzlement. If you want to eat it, it's also okay. Nangong Luyun impatiently waved his hand. He felt that Baichen Ying's IQ right now should be a negative number. Baichen Ying's eyes suddenly lit up, based on his understanding of Second Brother. When he looked at him using an expression of looking at an idiot, then it mostly means he was too lazy to bother holding a grudge with him. Although he was being looked at as if he was retarded, but able to jump over a calamity, then it was better than anything else. Okay, wear it, then I'll wear it. Without saying anything more, Baichen Ing tied the odd jade pendant to his waist. Raise your head, stick out your chest, and stand properly. Nangong Luyun's faint tone came over. As a result, Baichen Ing immediately stood up very straight like a post. Nangong Luyun held Su Luo's hand and pointed to Baichen Ing to say, carefully sense a bit. How does he seem right now? How does he seem? Su Luo held her chin and walked around the statue like Baichen Ing for 1 circle then another. Baichen Ing wanted to cry, but lacked the tears. Thinking that he, as the stately young master of Baichen Palace, he would always ride a horse to cross a bridge with houses full of women beckoning him with red sleeves. There was only he, the young master of Baichen Palace, to choose others' rule, but now he was being assessed from head to toe by a little Mississippi. The most important point was that he simply didn't know what the other side was looking for. That expression of Su Luo's seemed to say that this pig is fat enough, you can take it out to kill it. Okay. Really scary. Author's notes. A day and 4,000 lines of discussion, like this. How could this author dare to move against Little Shadow? The strong. You guys directly changed Baichen Ying's fate. Don't you guys feel important? Chapter 1386. Big Plan of Making Money 1. Beichening wanted to cry, but lacked the tears as he weakly asked, "Sister-in-law, in the end, what are you looking for?" Su Luo lifted her eyes, the corner of her lips curving at him. "You really don't know?" "I really don't know, Beichening was curious to the extreme. As a result, he nodded his head with all his strength. He really couldn't understand after much thinking. It was just a jade pendant. Why would the two of them have such a strange expression? Su Luo laughably looked at this lively youth full of sunshine. She patted his shoulders with a tone carrying a trace of sympathy. "Little Beichen, you this waste, lass." "Why waste?" Beichen opened his eyes wide in disbelief, waving his fist to demonstrate his strength. "Is there another that is more gifted than me?" Beichen. But Su Luo and Nangong Luyun used an identical, sympathetic expression to look at him. Their looks made this dressed-in-red youth's heart jump with ba-thump sounds. Suddenly, he became somewhat apprehensive. At this time, those few attendants of his finally ran over eagerly. Each and every one of them was perspiring freely, gasping for breath. When they saw Beichening, they immediately let out a breath of relief. "Young master, next time, you must by all means don't abandon us and run off alone. If you do so, how are we supposed to protect you, Beichening humphed with disdain. "You can't even chase up to this young master. How are you supposed to protect this young master?" "Hey!" These words that were said seemed reasonable. These four bodyguards suddenly seemed to see the light. But immediately after, when they saw Beichening, their complexions suddenly became deathly pale. You. Their fingers pointed at Beichening. Each and every one of their eyes were opened wide, as if they had seen a ghost. Beichening became more bewildered, his sword-like eyebrows wrinkling. His eyes were like snow swords and swept them a sideways glance. What did you guys discover?" He wasn't able to get the answer from Second Brother and Su Luo, but these people were his attendants. They would not dare to conceal it from him, right? "Young master, your cultivation." How could it? The four bodyguards were so anxious that they almost cried. In the end, what happened? Beichen Ying's hand extended out, and with one lift, he hoisted up the bodyguard nearest to him. His expression was gloomy and cold, carrying a threat. "Still won't quickly say it?" That bodyguard immediately explained everything clearly. "Young master, don't know what happened. Just now, looking at you, you only have the cultivation of a first-rank but able to lift him up with ease." This proved that young master's cultivation did not disappear. First rank. Beichen Ying's disbelieving gaze swept towards the other three bodyguards. Yes, really only at the first rank. Didn't lie to you." Those three bodyguards all stood up straight and nodded their heads in sync. Beichening tossed the bodyguard he held in his hand to the ground and looked at his own hand in bewilderment. Then, he lifted his eyes to look towards Nangong Luyun. "In the end, what is going on?" Beichening mumbled to himself. Su Luo's white as jade finger pointed towards the jade pendant at his waist. Could it be that the problem comes from this jade pendant? Beichening took off the jade pendant. He fiddled with it in his hand curiously. This jade pendant was the one Second Brother just tossed to him. When he tied this jade pendant to himself, a strange thing happened. If I didn't guess wrongly, this jade pendant has the ability to deceive. Su Luo indifferently said, "After wearing this jade pendant, Beichening, your cultivation only seemed to be at the first rank. Then, aren't you just a waste?" Saying till the later part, Su Luo couldn't help but to start laughing. "For real or faking it? How is it that I don't feel anything?" Beichening stared at the jade pendant curiously, looking at it from left to right. He couldn't find anything strange about this jade pendant. Su Luo saw he didn't believe it, so she took back the jade pendant from his hand and tied it to her own waist. She used the jade pendant as a decoration for her dress. Chapter 1387. Big Plan of Making Money 2. Just when Su Luo hung this jade pendant on her body, suddenly, the aura on Su Luo's body abruptly changed. Now, she looked like a little miss that didn't understand cultivation at all. "Wow! So it's really like this. Beichen Ying's eyes brightened in a flash. As expected, this jade really has the ability to deceive, able to conceal a person's aura. Moreover, you can control it to show the strength you want to show. For example, say you want people to think you are only at first rank strength. Then you are completely able to reveal a cultivation at first rank. Su Luo smilingly explained. Only, this jade pendant was somewhat of little value. Its impact wasn't as great as a spirit pinball. Suddenly, the rays of light in Beichen Ying's eyes shot in all directions. I have it. One could only see him waving his fist in excitement. Clearly, he was very excited. What's up? Su Luo asked curiously. Do you know why I came to find you this time? Beichen Ying winked his large, pretty, and bright eyes. Why did you come? Su Luo asked with some curiosity. Do you want to earn a fortune or not? Beichen Ying grinned with hee-hee sounds and crossed his hands over his arms. His face was so proud of himself that he couldn't conceal it. Money, ah? With regards to us, does money even have any meaning? Su Luo calmly replied with a question. With regards to them as cultivators, money was merely a worldly possession. Money already couldn't buy the things they needed. Only crystal stones were useful to them. What we will be winning will be crystal stones. As if he could hear Su Luo's thought, Beichen Ying smilingly sat down on a rock at the side, as he unhurriedly said, every time the four countries' power struggle competition, it will always feature a gambling joint. Last time, a large part of it was won by Luo Haoming from Liu Palace Hall. It really was a great regret in my life. Luo Haoming is, Su Luo asked indifferently, able to win and snatch away crystal stones from Beichen Ying and Nangong Liuyun's hand. He certainly was not an ordinary character. Luo Haoming is Luo Haochen's biological older brother. Beichen Ying, seeing Su Luo, didn't know, so he started to help her plug the holes in her knowledge. Like this kind of family's #1 successor, normally, they would be single-mindedly cultivating. They would hardly ever come out to move about. But it cannot be denied that their strength are all very formidable. Moreover, Nangong Liuyun's eyes narrowed slightly, the corner of his lips slowly hooking up. His pitch-black as night eyes seemed profoundly mysterious. No one could guess at the thoughts in his heart. Moreover, what? Su Luo questioned closely to ask. Moreover, the #1 from last time's roaming dragon list was this Luo Haoming. Beichen Ying really didn't want to say this matter out loud. In the end, he only sighed and told the truth. The four countries' power struggle competition, in fact, has another name called the ranking competition for the roaming dragon list. Beichen Ying, seeing Su Luo, completely didn't know, so he explained it to her bit by bit. The last competition, because we were still young, so we all couldn't participate. But the majority of the people in our older brother's generation all participated. Older brother's generation? Su Luo's eyes blinked. Beichen Ying unhappily looked at Su Luo. These days, indeed, you have seen a lot of the younger generation from influential families. But none of them are the #1 successor to the families. Those people are, in this aspect, Su Luo was a complete novice. That's also right, because these days, if she wasn't being chased to be killed, she was just fleeing or she was searching for antidotes. Where would she have the time to understand these things from every country? Also, there was no one to tell her these stuff. Beichen Ying lifted his eyes to steal a look at Nangong Liuyun, seeing that he didn't stop him. So he talked nonstop to teach everything to Su Luo. Among the 10 great families, the absolutely amazing characters are many. Just take the roaming dragon list to explain. The top of the list on the roaming dragon list is Luo Haoming. At that time, he was 10th ranked. The second person on the list is Anya Xin, the #1 successor for Anya family, 10th rank. The third person is Central Palace's #1 successor, Mo Xiaoxuan, 9th rank. Only after these people got on the roaming dragon list did they all concentrate fully on cultivation. So, you couldn't even bump into them. Chapter 1388, Big Plan of Making Money 3. Beichen Ying saw Su Luo look distracted from listening to his explanation. So he added another sentence. This was their achievement at that time. 10 years ago's history. Can't be right. Su Luo's eyes were opened so wide that they were clear. Among the hidden powerful families, there are still so many strong experts that are hidden. The strength that was shown on this continent is merely a small part of it. Bei Qining smilingly said, "This continent is a lot bigger than what you imagined, and also a lot stronger." Bei Qining again said, "If you can enter the top 10 on the roaming dragon list, then the benefits are something you can't imagine." "Oh, what benefits?" Su Luo asked somewhat expectantly. "The top 10 on the roaming dragon list will become the most promising and also have the most strength in the younger generation on this continent. They will be bathed in divine light. If their luck is good, it will be an opportunity to activate the hidden element attribute in their body." Bei Qinying's eyes showed an endless yearning. If one could activate the dark attribute, as everyone knows, was the strongest attack attribute. But because it had practically disappeared on the continent, therefore, lightning attribute became ranked number 1 attack attribute. If one could obtain the dark attribute, at that time, receiving the king of dark attributes inheritance. Just thinking about it, Bei Qining was about to salivate. At this moment, Su Luo gave a howl of grief silently in her heart. Originally, she had thought that her 8th rank was already enough to look at. To participate in the power struggle competition of the 4 countries should be enough to hold a place among the top 10, right? But listening to Bei Qinying's description, she suddenly had a wanting to cry, but lacking the tears feeling. 10 strongest. Would it really have a sit for her? Nangong Luyun patted her head. You wanted to enter the top 10 strongest naturally is not a difficult matter. With him here, how could a top 10 be difficult? If it was only possible. Su Luo gloomily grabbed her hair. Now, she didn't even have the qualification to enter the competition. This jade pendant? Bei Qining once again built a plan on this jade pendant. This jade pendant. A crafty light flashed through Su Luo's eyes. She beckoned with her hand, and the 3 people formed a circle. Then, Su Luo said her idea once through. "Sister-in-law, you are simply too black, two-faced that kind of black." Bei Qinying's eyes sparkled as he excitedly said, "Are you praising or disparaging me?" Su Luo tapped his forehead in annoyance. "Naturally praising you, Okay, I'll take charge of all parts of this matter. You guys just wait to collect the crystal stones, Bei Qining was also an impetuous person, saying he will do it, he will then go do it. He turned around and immediately ran down the mountain. Those 4 bodyguards were already sent away to keep watch. Now, they naturally followed behind Bei Qining eagerly to run down the mountain. Bei Qining is quite cute. Su Luo looked at Bei Qinying's red brocade gown that was blown up by the wind and smilingly shook her head, like a child that hasn't grown up. Very amusing. He ought to grow up? Nangong Luyun snorted twice. Wait until after this time's matter gets resolved. Then let him and Ziyin get married. Their 8 words of compatibility haven't even been written. Are you going to rigidly force this marriage? Su Luo cast an unhappy glance at him. Soon after, a crafty expression flashed through her eyes. However, the foreshadowing has already been buried. Just will depend on how they freely develop. Inside this time's making big money plan, Ziyin played a necessary part. Her contact with Bei Qining naturally would not be little. This coming in contact often, wouldn't it slowly create feelings? Su Luo smiled with a face full of complacency as she watched Bei Qinying's back. The 2 people didn't stand long on the side of the overhanging cliff before someone came to report. Emperor Jing had sent people over. Su Luo smilingly cast Nangong Luyun a glance. Looks like your father the emperor got impatient. Chapter 1389, Big Plan of Making Money for I ought to go and have a look. Nangong Luyun's elegant hand held Su Luo's and said to her, "Come with me. Let's go together. I can go with you, but we must start to perform the show from now on." Su Luo placed this dragon-designed jade pendant that could conceal her aura at her waist. She mobilized her spirit force and changed her aura. Very quickly, the aura that her body gave off became a lot weaker. An expert, at one glance, would know she was barely at the 5th rank. You alas, Nangong Luoyun saw Su Luo started to play, and he helplessly smiled in a spoiling manner. He pinched her nose. Humph, humph. I want to see when your father the emperor sees my strength, whether he will still prevent our marriage. Su Luo raised her chin. A calculating plan flashed through her eyes. Maybe it was because she fought her way from northern Imo to the imperial capital, so there were people who saw her real 8th-rank strength. The result was that this matter was spread to the imperial capital. Su Luo always liked to bury her cards deep and have it explode out at a critical moment. But now, her strength had been completely seen by people. This was not something she wanted to happen. Therefore, when she found out this dragon-designed jade pendant could conceal her real strength, moreover, it could change her aura as she wished, Su Luo naturally was extremely happy. However, this dragon-designed jade pendant was not all-powerful. For example, now, Su Luo was at the 8th rank, but no matter what, she could not imitate the strength of a 9th rank. That was to say, she could only pretend to be weak and could not pretend to be strong. From southern mountains to the imperial capital wasn't really that far. Based on dragon-scaled horses' speed, they would arrive in an incense's stick of time. Inside the imperial study, Emperor Jing had his hand behind his back, walking back and forth inside the luxuriously decorated imperial study. His expression seemed to be somewhat perturbed. After he saw that unfilial son of his, how was he to mention the matter of Su Luo? Based on his overprotective temper, alas, he shielded her like that. Why wouldn't he shield his own dad? Emperor Jing depressingly patted his own head. Just at this time, the sound of 2 steady footsteps came from outside. Emperor Jing's speed was very fast. As if flying, he ran to the long table. Nangong Luoyun pushed open the door. After, he led Su Luo and walked in calmly. At this moment, on the table in front of Emperor Jing was a layer of paper, his right hand holding a writing brush, just standing calmly there. Underneath the brush, energetic and strong words appeared one by one. Nangong Luoyun searched out a chair, without leave, and brought Su Luo to sit down. Afterwards, he attentively brought her tea and poured it for her. Emperor Jing originally had put on airs, stretching his face taut, pretending to look strict and serious. But looking at the two of them before his eyes, drinking tea and eating pastries, without regard for others and exchanging flirtatious glances, completely lacking moral principle, anger immediately rushed up from within. No matter how you say it, he was still his elder. Who would enter a room and not greet one's elder before starting to eat? Emperor Jing, panting with rage, tossed down the brush. The brush was tossed onto the paper. Immediately, the nicely written words were destroyed. In the wake of the sharp and clear sound that arrived, only now did Nangong Luoyun leisurely raise his eyes to sweep Emperor Jing a glance. Emperor Jing, panting in rage, glared at him. Finally, no to returns? Nangong Luoyun, with a ghost of a smile. What matters does Father Emperor have to call us over? Nothing the matter, then you would go. When Emperor Jing heard his words, the anger he restrained with great difficulty rushed up like the tide. Not so. Nangong Luoyun tossed a date cake into his mouth, then unhurriedly said a sentence. If you have nothing, then I have some matters to mention. Emperor Jing knew things that Nangong Luoyun wanted to speak off certainly would be troublesome matters. As a result, he hurriedly waved his hand, calling you over. I naturally have matters to discuss. Saying this, he fiercely glared at Su Luo. Chapter 1390, Big Plan of Making Money 5. However, when he sent this glare towards Su Luo, his eyes immediately became somewhat blank. Su Luo saw Emperor Jing looking over and smilingly said hello to him. Uncle Nangong, I trust you've been well since we last met. According to her current strength, in Eastern Ling, she was a transcendental existence. Naturally, she didn't need to be as submissive as before. Who would have thought that when Emperor Jing saw her smile, his soul almost immediately flew out. You, who are you? Emperor Jing's voice carried a thread of trembling. This face seemed very familiar, as if he had once seen it in his old memories. But Emperor Jing was unable to recall where he had previously seen it. Su Luo faintly smiled. Does Uncle Nangong remember me? At that time, I exchanged a few spirit treasures from the treasure storage pavilion. Still, I hope Uncle Nangong won't take offense. You are Su Luo? Emperor Jing opened his eyes wide with disbelief. Just at this moment, the sounds of graceful footsteps came from outside the door. Escorted by palace maids and court eunuchs, the Empress, dressed in a dark yellow phoenix gown, leisurely arrived. When the Empress saw Su Luo's appearance, her entire person seemed to have been immediately fixed in place, completely stunned. At this moment, Emperor Jing's voice came through. The shock in the Empress's heart was as if empty Tai had collapsed. A flood had overflowed to the heavens. Her figure swayed and almost fell. This woman's beauty was to the point that made even her choke. Could it be Su Luo? The Su Luo who the Crown Prince had broke off the engagement with from before? This was impossible. Now, the Crown Prince who had accompanied the Empress by her side, his mouth was also opened into an O shape. Su Luo? The Crown Prince directly started to stutter. Such beauty was not of this world, a stunning woman from all aspects. How could she be that originally delicate, pretty, and beautiful Su Luo? However, she really resembled Su Luo. Her facial features practically hadn't changed. But don't know why, looking at her now gave people the feeling of a beauty that shook people to the core, close to suffocating. The Crown Prince stared stupidly at her, his soul almost leaving his body. Nangong Luoyun coldly snorted with displeasure. Momentarily, in the originally warm air, it seemed as if air conditioning had come on. In a flash, the temperature dropped to freezing point, so cold that people trembled all over. The Crown Prince, Empress, Emperor Jing, and other people suddenly felt a coldness on their backs, a chilliness slowly spreading from the soles of their feet. Nangong Luoyun's long arm extended out, pulling Su Luo to directly sit on his leg. His strong, powerful arms held Su Luo's lovely full waist, dangerously narrowing his long and narrow phoenix-shaped eyes. He cast a provocative glance at the Crown Prince, the corner of his mouth hooking into a demonical, wicked sneer. Su Luo was originally engaged to the Crown Prince, but he personally broke off this marriage proposal. Now, Luo was Nangong Luoyun's treasured girl. The Crown Prince looked at Su Luo. His legs practically couldn't move. His heart was full of what was called remorse. At that time, how could his heart be confused by pig's lard? How could he have broken off this marriage? If he hadn't broken off this marriage, then this exceptionally beautiful woman would be his. The Crown Prince was just having daydreams of regret in his heart when Nangong Luoyun swept a meaningful glance over. Immediately, the Crown Prince's back seemed to have been pricked by long needles. His whole body seemed to have fallen into an ice house. Emperor Jing was the first to return to his senses. He saw the atmosphere was stiff and quietly coughed once. You all came? Sit. Able to let Emperor Jing grant a seat in the imperial study. This was an unprecedented rare honor. Not because the Empress and the Crown Prince had obtained Emperor Jing's sacred heart. It was simply that Emperor Jing saw Nangong Luoyun seated as steady as Mt. Tai, and even this daughter of Su Zian was steadily sitting there, so there was no reason for the Empress and Crown Prince to accompany them by standing. So, he simply waved his hand grandly, and everyone all sat down. Seeing before her eyes this scene like three large nations gathering to discuss the economy, the smile at the corner of Su Luo's mouth increasingly enlarged. The play following this would be very marvelous. Chapter 1391. Big Plan of Making Money 6. Emperor Jing, seeing Nangong Luoyun's appearance of acting as though there was nobody else present and not getting involved, he immediately got angry again, and he heavily snorted. The two of you, just when Emperor Jing spoke, the Crown Prince, in amazement, suddenly interrupted. Father Emperor, wait. The Crown Prince seemed to have discovered a very strange fact. He loudly stated, Su Luo, originally, when you left, you were at the 5th rank, right? How come now you are still at the 5th rank? What? Emperor Jing was suddenly startled. He hastily looked towards Su Luo. Emperor Jing's cultivation wasn't high, so he was unable to tell. However, with a wave of his hand, a colorless gray figure appeared beside him and leaned over to mutter something beside his ear. Actually, really only at the 5th rank? Emperor Jing's despising gaze swept over Su Luo. He coldly said the legendary genius was only merely this. The news that arrived several days earlier had said Su Luo had stepped into the ranks among the 8th rank or higher experts. At that time, Emperor Jing still rejoiced a little over the matter, when his hot-headedness almost led to a huge blunder. But only now did he know, as it turned out, the rumors were fake. Wherefore was Su Luo at the 8th rank? She was actually only at the 5th rank. In order to marry into the Nangong family, she actually told a lie, simply repulsive. That thread of a favorable impression towards Su Luo, in Emperor Jing's heart, was immediately obliterated completely. Of course, his favorable impression also was established on the basis that Su Luo was an expert at the 8th rank. Now, since Su Luo wasn't at the 8th rank, then that favorable impression naturally vanished like smoke in thin air. Sure enough, this face changed fast enough. Su Luo secretly felt Emperor Jing was amusing in her heart. Who is the genius Uncle Nangong speaks of? It surely isn't me, right? Thinking originally, I continuously carried the name of good-for-nothing for more than 10 years. Su Luo seemed to completely not know what Emperor Jing was angry about and spoke with all smiles. Emperor Jing's eyes half-narrowed. Originally, based on Su Luo's status of an expert at the 8th rank, he still wanted to persuade her with kind words and urge her to return to Su Manor. But since she was now only at the 5th rank, in that case, it didn't need him, this regent, to lower himself to say it. Emperor Jing coldly said, originally, when you were a good-for-nothing, Su Manor didn't treat you thinly, giving you food to eat and cloth to wear. After you flourish, you must not forget the Su Manor's grace. Emperor Jing's words already couldn't be called a hint. Rather, he stated it explicitly. But Su Luo pretended she was unable to make sense of what she was hearing. If Uncle Nangong feels being insulted, chased and beaten every day, eating food that was no better than pig feed, sleeping in places that are no better than a doghouse, these kind of things, like saying that Su Manor didn't treat me thinly, is really not thin. Su Luo's words were not the least bit polite. Emperor Jing completely didn't expect that this daughter of a little concubine was so clever and eloquent. This reckless to directly retort back to him. Didn't she want to marry into the Nangong family? How dare she be this arrogant and impudent? Impudent, Su Luo. Is this how you should speak towards father emperors? Emperor Jing hadn't berated her yet before the crown prince already spoke. The corner of Su Luo's mouth raised in a taunting smile. She still hadn't spoken when Nangong Luyun lazily pulled Su Luo up. He showed a demonic smile towards Emperor Jing. This is your purpose today? If Emperor Jing dared to say it was, then without a doubt, Nangong Luyun would turn around and leave. It couldn't help but be said that Emperor Jing still understood Nangong Luyun really well. But with regards to Nangong Luyun, who disdained even quarreling with him, Emperor Jing's heart that was as fragile as glass couldn't help but sustain some injuries. He resentfully glared at Su Luo. If not for that blood in her body that made people's hearts boil, would he, a magnificent regent, need to accept a compromise like this? Sit and let's have a proper talk. Emperor Jing could only open his mouth to say. After persuading the person to stay, Emperor Jing's gaze once again turned to Su Luo. Do you want to marry Luyin or not? Su Luo indifferently smiled and didn't dim-wittedly jump into the hole he had dug. So what if I want to? So what if I don't want to? Chapter 1392, Deterrence of the Imperial Palace. 1. If you want to marry into the imperial family, then you must do it legitimately. Emperor Jing put on an act and hardened his face. Oh, what is a legitimate way? Su Luo nestled in Nangong Liuyun's embrace, the corner of her mouth lifting into a ghost of a smile. Return to Su Manor. Let Grandfather Su personally come to discuss the marriage. Otherwise, the Nangong royal family absolutely won't marry in a loathsome girl of unknown origin. Emperor Jing's appearance looked strict, using righteous words to say this. Return to Su Manor? Su Luo secretly felt it was laughable in her heart. That very day, Su Zian saw calamity looming, and he didn't hesitate to expel her from Su Manor. Now, seeing her body had spirit blood, he didn't hesitate to let go of his face to force her to return to Su Manor. Simply ridiculous. Was she, Su Luo, someone that if people wanted to force, then could be forced? Immediately, Su Luo laughed with hee-hee sounds, and she gazed straight at Emperor Jing. Want to make me return to Su Manor? No way. What Su Zian was planning, she could guess even with her toe. If she entered Su Manor, could she still walk out alive? That would definitely be impossible. Emperor Jing was refused by Su Luo to his face, and he immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. What did you say? I said no way. Su Luo evoked a ridiculing smile and cast a withering glance at Emperor Jing. Don't tell me you don't want to marry Nangong Luyun? Emperor Jing, pointing at Nangong Luyun, directly questioned in a rage. Nangong Luyun held Su Luo's hand tightly. Su Luo turned her hands over and entwined their 10 fingers together. Soon after, she faced Emperor Jing. Nangong Luyun must be mine. Such huge courage, such an arrogant tone. Emperor Jing was angered to the point of laughing by Su Luo's words. He's such a perfect son, so outstandingly gifted to the extreme son. She actually dared to shamelessly say these kinds of words. You this. Emperor Jing's finger that was pointing at Su Luo trembled slightly. The veins on his forehead bulged out. Very clearly, he was severely angered by Su Luo. But at this moment, Su Luo acted as though nobody else was present to snuggle in Nangong Liuyun's arms. She unhurriedly peeled a grape and delivered it into Nangong Liuyun's mouth. Although Nangong Luyun hadn't said anything at all from beginning till end, his actions were already clear-cut on Su Luo's side. After he slowly and deliberately ate the grape, Nangong Luyun's long and narrow phoenix eyes swept a glance over to Emperor Jing, who was angered to the point of shaking, and carelessly asked a sentence. Are you done being angry? Are you done being angry? Emperor Jing only felt his forehead had a burst of darkness. His treasured son, seeing him being angered by someone, not only didn't he move to help, instead, he even calmly asked if he was done being angry. The more Emperor Jing thought, the more depressed he became. He almost violently spit out a mouthful of old blood. You guys, the two of you guys. Unfilial son. Humph. Emperor Jing heavily flung his sleeves and turned around. If he was to see that calm and composed expression of Nangong Liuyun's again, very likely, he would be so angered to directly breathing his last. As I'm an unfilial son, then if I don't disobey your words, on the contrary, wouldn't it be more in name than in fact? While Nangong Luyun peeled an amber-colored grape to feed to Su Luo, he also carelessly spoke. Emperor Jing was angered to the point of convulsing. That nose gave a wheezing sound, like the bellows of the wind. In short, merely a sentence, and want to make my family's Luo girl return to Su Manor, don't even think about it. Nangong Luyun freely waved his hands and set the decree of heaven and earth with these words. But, although he knew from childhood till now that the words that Nangong Luyun said absolutely wouldn't change, but Emperor Jing still wanted to make this last struggle. Nothing to discuss. Nangong Luyun indifferently smiled. Does Father Emperor still have other matters? Emperor Jing hatefully glared at Nangong Luyun. He wanted to retort, but at this moment, a strong pressure of an expert that seemed to be there and not there spread out from Nangong Liuyun's whole body. Chapter 1393, Deterrence of the Imperial Palace, 2. This strong pressure of an expert possessing the strength of a 10th rank, the result of it coming out so frantically, was extremely shocking. One could only hear the glazed roof tiles on top of the imperial study make a crashing sound. The entire palace hall seemed like a lonely boat experiencing the howling wind and torrential rain in the ocean. It shook left and swung to the right, as if it would collapse at any moment. Inside the imperial study, aside from Su Luo, everyone's complexion changed. Because this deterrence force wasn't only attacking the study, it was also attacking people. At that time, when Li Yaoxiang used his 8th rank pressured against Su Luo, he pressured Su Luo until her blood vessels burst and blood overflowed from her pores. He pressured her until it seemed as if a large mountain was pressing down on her body, pressured her until she almost kneeled on the ground. But now, Nangong Lian had already regained his strength at 10th rank. How astonishing was that force! In only a split second, Emperor Jing then felt an enormous pressure press down on his back. Emperor Jing's knees softened, and he almost directly knelt in front of Su Luo. This discovery simply made Emperor Jing so startled, as if he had seen a ghost. He was the majestic, honored emperor. If it was spread out that he knelt towards Su Luo, this girl, then he might as well directly cut open his abdomen and commit suicide. An intense pride propped up Emperor Jing. He stubbornly gritted his teeth and straightened his back, not letting himself kneel down. This time, Nangong Lian only used 10% of his power and nothing more. Contrary to Emperor Jing, the Crown Prince and the Empress didn't have such good luck. At this moment, the Crown Prince and the Empress seemed to be knifed in a deep fryer. They heated up from head to toe in burning pain, so painful they almost suffocated in an instant. The cold sweat on their faces rolled down like a waterfall. Very quickly, a puddle of water accumulated on the ground. How could they still steadily sit on the chairs? They had already fallen on the floor long ago in pain. If they didn't have a last thread of dignity, maybe they would already be pleading and weeping bitter tears. The Crown Prince simply was unable to bear it, and with a flop sound, knelt down towards Nangong Lian. He was wrong. He was really wrong. Such a powerful Nangong Lian. He only needed to sit there casually, and the spirit aura he released was enough to kill him in a second. This kind of character, before, he was really blind and actually dared to go against him. At this moment, the Crown Prince's heart was full of deep fear and regret. The Empress's face was covered in cold sweat, and her entire person seemed to have been fished up from the water. Her aura was feeble, with a gossamer of breath, as if she could faint at any time. The her that was half lying down on the ground, half narrowed her eyes, looking at Nangong Lian with blurred consciousness. Why? Why did that slut's son mature so quickly? Why must her son helplessly kneel before that slut's son? Why would it be like this? In the Empress's eyes that would never concede, clear tears tumbled down, drop by drop. In front of formidable strength, all crafty plots and machinations were merely paper tigers, with not a bit of usefulness. Emperor Jing was forced to heavily sit on the red sandalwood chair by this strong pressure. But because the power was too heavy, the pressure was still there. The heavy pressure was like a mountain range that, when it forced Emperor Jing to sit, he directly split the red sandalwood chair when he sat down. One could only hear a plop sound, and Emperor Jing's buttock sat on the floor, completely lacking any image. Under his body was a pile of shattered red sandalwood fragments. Stop! Quickly, stop! The sweat on Emperor Jing's body rushed forth like broth. Panting for breath, his hands firmly grabbed Nangong Liuyun's sleeve. His eyes were full of helplessness and pain. Not far away, the palace maids and court eunuchs that were waiting on them outside had long ago dropped into a pile. Seeing these people that were in extreme pain, the corner of Nangong Liuyun's mouth perked up in a demonically charming, wanton smile. He indifferently smiled. In this beautiful moment that was like a blooming lotus, the atmosphere, just now, that was like an indistinguishable hell suffocating people, suddenly disappeared. Chapter 1394, Deterrence of the Imperial Palace 3. Following the departure of that deterrence pressure, only then was Emperor Jing able to slowly gasp for air. He supported himself by holding onto a pillar and shakingly stood up. The crown prince and the empress were still collapsed on the ground. It was not that they didn't want to get up. Rather, at this moment, the last thread of strength in their body was used up. They were weaker than even an infant. How could they get up? Emperor Jing, seeing Nangong Luyun still sitting there, calm and composed as before, a deeply complicated expression appeared in his eyes. At this moment, Nangong Luyun seemed so unfamiliar that even he, this father, didn't recognize him. At this moment, Emperor Jing seemed to recall that year when the very young Nangong Luyun caused the bitter scene of the massacre in the imperial capital. Emperor Jing smiled self-mockingly. At that time, the nearly 5 years old Nangong Luyun was already so strong. How could him, right now, listen to his instructions to handle matters? He really had sat on this position of the emperor for too long a time and was used to the ease and comfort. He couldn't even clearly see this principle. Father Emperor, the crown prince, half lying down on the ground, roared unwillingly in his heart. That Neil just now ruthlessly ripped apart his last thread of dignity, letting Nangong Luyun trample it. Now, after he had gotten his life back, the crown prince immediately became upset. Emperor Jing waved his hands and said to Nangong Luyun, "Whatever you like to do, then go do it." Emperor Jing's voice revealed an endless downheartedness. The matter just now really gave him lingering fear. It was as if he had woken up from a dream. Nangong Luyun had grown to the stage that even he had to look up to. If he was still delusionally wanting to control him, that was absolutely impossible. The corner of Nangong Luyun's mouth pulled slightly. Now you finally see it clearly? It can't be regarded as too late. Emperor Jing smiled bitterly. If it wasn't for this thunderous attack by Nangong Luyun, perhaps he would still be immersed in a dream, unable to see reality clearly. The reality was, compared to Su Luo, that loathsome girl, he, this father, wasn't even worth a fart. In fact, Emperor Jing knew the problem lies with him. If back then, he was able to protect Nangong's mother. If at that time, after Nangong's massacre in the imperial capital, he could protect the very young Nangong. Now, he wouldn't be like this to this father emperor either, disdainful. Emperor Jing, thinking of this, suddenly felt as if his heart was pierced by a snow sword. It hurt to the point he was seeing stars. "You guys go back." Emperor Jing waved his hands. Nangong Luyun stood up and indifferently pulled up the corner of his mouth. "Leave me a place for the 4 countries' power struggle competition." "Your place has always been kept for you. The other 9 people are already in place if you have time." After seeing the situation clearly, Emperor Jing's tone was unprecedentedly mild. But Nangong Luyun icily and arrogantly interrupted his words. "There aren't 9 people." Emperor Jing didn't understand. "There is only 8 people." Nangong Luyun lifted up Su Luo's hand, his tone not allowing any dispute. "Luo will also compete." But Emperor Jing immediately frowned. Those 9 people, every one of them were all above the 6th rank. They were the secret power that the Nangong family had hidden for a long time. But wasn't Su Luo only at the 5th rank? Emperor Jing tried to reason with Nangong Luyun. This time's 4 countries' power struggle competition. Everyone's strength is above the 6th rank. She is only at the 5th rank. At that time, she won't even make it through the first round. You don't need to be concerned about it. Nangong Luyun's good-looking eyebrows pursed. Emperor Jing indignantly gave a heavy snort. He knew perfectly she would lose, and to even waste a place. This son seriously was possessed. Nangong Luyun didn't give him the chance to refuse. He led Su Luo by her hand and unhurriedly left. Following their departure, the atmosphere immediately loosened. "Father Emperor," the crown prince almost cried. Just now, he returned from the gates of hell, and only now did he feel he was alive. Chapter 1395. Getting something done once and for all. 1. Emperor Jing glared at him. Can you beat second eldest? How is that possible? Don't need to say one finger from second brother. Even a thread of hair of his could exterminate him. The crown prince shook his head with all his might. Emperor Jing heavily snorted. I also am no match for him. So complaining and such is prohibited from now on. Emperor Jing really couldn't do anything about Nangong Luyun. Others could still force their own son with filial piety. But Emperor Jing was wrong from the beginning. If he dared to compel Nangong Luyun with filial piety, very likely the other side wouldn't even look at him. That was simply inviting insult to himself. The crown prince suddenly felt that he wanted to cry, but lacked the tears. From now on, don't go provoke second eldest, otherwise, even I won't be able to protect you. Emperor Jing warned with a stern voice, his gaze turning from the crown prince to the empress. At this moment, the empress's eyes were half-narrowed. Her eyes were lifeless, decrepit, and had given up all hope. Seeing her former love rival's son grow to this degree, besides despairing, what else could the empress do? Oppose? Now, she didn't even dare think about this idea. Emperor Jing, seeing their backs that were gradually getting farther away, heavily sighed. Su Luo's matter, he was really powerless. Don't know how he would explain it to elder ancestor Su over there. Emperor Jing heaved a sigh. In the evening, elder ancestor Su entered the palace. Elder Su, really sorry. Emperor Jing's expression was somewhat decrepit. He sighed and said, Second eldest is determined to protect that girl. You had better give up. Emperor Jing originally could be firm, because his son's strength was now extremely powerful, but he also knew Nangong Luyun didn't like him, wishing that this father emperor didn't exist. Grandfather Su's eyes half-narrowed. His Highness Prince Jin. 10th rank? Emperor Jing nodded his head with lingering fears. He really is at the 10th rank, authenticated. A trace of crazy jealousy flashed in Elder Su's eyes. Wanting to advance, for so many years he spent so much mental and physical efforts. Originally, he thought after he exited closed-door cultivation, he would amaze the world, but Nangong Liyun's existence ruthlessly smashed his self-esteem to pieces. Because when he entered closed-door cultivation, Nangong Liyun was only 7 or 8 years old. However, in the blink of an eye, he was promoted to the 8th rank, but Nangong Luyun, however, really was constantly comparing one to others will only make one angry to death. Elder Su pushed down the jealousy in his heart and indifferently drank a mouthful of tea. Is Su Luo also at the 8th rank? This isn't so. The rumors really were mixed with too much water. Emperor Jing coldly smiled. Don't know what's going on, clearly. Her strength is at the 5th rank. Yet the rumors made it become 8th rank. 5th rank? Elder Ancestor Su's eyes were pitch black, profoundly mysterious. Really is only at the 5th rank. If you don't believe it, Elder Su can go verify it yourself. Emperor Jing indifferently smiled. But with Nangong Luyun there, whether Elder Su could even see Su Luo was unknown. In another half a month, the ranking battle for the roaming dragon list will begin. Is your majesty certain those several people will come over? Elder Su said half, and left half of the meaning unsaid. Emperor Jing naturally understood the meaning of his words. The ranking battle for the roaming dragon list, every time, there was a main judge with 4 assistant judges. The candidate for main judge was never fixed. This time's event, after many rotations, actually it's Grandmaster Rong Yun's turn to be the main judge. But there was only half a month before the competition began, yet Grandmaster Rong Yun still hadn't sent over word. Thinking of Grandmaster Rong Yun, Emperor Jing's eyes suddenly shone. He really was an idiot, Su Luo was Grandmaster Rong Yun's last disciple. He had such a good opportunity and didn't use it. Why should he waste so much physical and financial resources to look around? Chapter 1396. Getting things done once and for all, to moreover, Emperor Jing also realized that he had done something really stupid. He had continuously forgot Su Luo was Grandmaster Rong Yun's last disciple. His impression of Su Luo had always been the disliked daughter birthed by a concubine from Su Manor. Grandmaster Rong Yun's disciple naturally was worthy of Nangong Luoyun. Also, through Su Luo, he could get in touch with Grandmaster Rong Yun. This was an extreme honor. Compared to Grandmaster Rong Yun, Elder Su was certainly not enough to look at O. Therefore, Emperor Jing firmly waved his hands. It's impossible for Su Luo to return to Su Manor. You should just give up. Moreover, she is Grandmaster Rong Yun's disciple. Aren't you worried you'd offend that person and he'll directly exterminate the entire Su Manor? Elder Su's eyes, in a flash, became ice-cold as frost. He severely glared at Emperor Jing, and the corner of his mouth hooked up into a strange sneer. Why do you think Grandmaster Rong Yun would accept her as a disciple? Wasn't it just for that spirit blood of hers? Emperor Jing's eyes, for an instant, stared blankly. Then he immediately responded. Grandmaster Rong Yun accepted her as a disciple before that. Elder Su waved his hands. Those people's thoughts, could he not guess completely? Humph, be that as it may. Elder Su had no choice but to put away his coveting heart. He decided to wait and see if Grandmaster Rong Yun would protect that girl, and then act according to circumstances. After Nangong Luoyun and Su Luo left the imperial palace, they sat on the dragon-scaled horse and directly went to the southern mountains. Don't know who spread the news. On this journey, countless ambushes appeared once again. Su Luo speechlessly shook her head. Going on like this, what kind of thing would it be? It's simply too annoying. Every time she went out, she would be chased to kill, but these people's strengths, she completely wouldn't put in her eyes. So, Su Luo didn't make the move herself, and every time, she would send her spirit pets out to go deal with them. Going through these times' experiences, the little divine dragon and the small fox's actual combat experience rose, layer by layer. Even the variant red acacia tree also harvested many spirit essence souls for it to cultivate with. But today, this person that was blocking Su Luo's path wasn't simple at all. Seeing that person wearing a conical bamboo hat on his head, in an ice-cold manner, standing beside an ancient tree clothed in black, Su Luo's eyes slightly puckered. The aura this person emitted was cold and strange, giving people the feeling of almost suffocating. A chilliness seemed to subconsciously spring up from the bottom of their hearts, making people unwittingly grow timid in their hearts. The solitary guest Li Qiran. Nangong Luoyun swept over with his phoenix eyes and was able to guess the other side's identity. Li Qiran, who was second place on the continent's bounty list. Su Luo's expression was unperturbed. The feeling he gives me is not less from that old witch Yin Xia at that time. Fairy Yin Xia was once the #1 person on the continent's bounty list. Pitifully, Nangong Luoyun, in order to kill her, used the heavenly thunder during his breakthrough to hack her to the point that she was seriously hurt and died of that injury. He originally wasn't at the 10th rank, but now he gave a faint feeling of exceeding that trend. Nangong Luoyun stated with an indifferent tone. 10th rank? This certainly was difficult to deal with. Although Nangong Luoyun was at the 10th rank, but his body had suffered serious injuries, at present he only looked 10th rank on the surface. In fact, a lot of his internal injuries hadn't healed at all. If one forced him to use force, it would make the injuries on his body even more serious. Come out! Li Qiran's ice-cold voice came through from neither near nor far. At this moment, the muffled sound of thunder broke out in the sky. Bean-sized raindrops surged down, slapping the ground and rolling up in a pile of light mist. I'll go first, you stay and properly recuperate. Su Luo appeased with a sentence, turned around, and went out the carriage door. After they returned to the capital, these houseflies constantly flew around Su Luo nonstop. Su Luo had wanted to find the opportunity to get it done once and for all a long time ago, but it was to no avail since there wasn't an opportunity. Now, there was such an opportunity. How could she waste it? Chapter 1397. Getting Things Done Once and for All 3. The solitary Ghastly Chiron unmovingly stood under the tree. His whole body was enveloped in black clothing. On his head was a bamboo hat. The brim of the hat was broad and wide, covering his entire face, making people unable to see his appearance clearly. But the killing intent emitting from his entire body caused the green grass within a 10-meter range to completely wilt. After Su Luo came out, she also didn't speak and only indifferently looked at him. "So you were Su Luo?" Li Chiron's voice was like the person himself, a glacier that had accumulated for a millennium, giving off a cold air that chilled to the bone. "Yes." Su Luo didn't avoid it and directly admitted it. "Since you admit it, then come take a walk with me. Blood was better when it's still warm." The price the employer had put forth for warm blood was 10 times more expensive. Li Chiron's voice was cold, but in his heart, he nevertheless had a trace of wariness, because he could feel that faintly discernible aura of a strong expert inside the carriage. "Go with you? I'm afraid someone would feel jealous." "Oh." Su Luo crossed her arms, her smile glittering, accompanied with that matchless beautiful complexion. Under the sunshine, her beauty, in this split second, simply was stifling. Li Chiron paused. His tone was still as cold and hard as before. "Your Highness Prince Jean, do you dare to come out and fight?" In the carriage, it was silent. Nangong Liuyun's injuries hadn't healed yet. How could Su Luo let him come out and fight? Let alone to say, Nangong Liuyun was her last trump card in a battle. The corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked up into a sly smile. "Li Chiron, did you sign up for the roaming dragon list ranking this time?" Li Chiron's indifferent gaze swept a cold glance over Su Luo. As a killer in the dark, he never liked to speak. "Then you signed up?" Su Luo smiled faintly. "Humph." Li Chiron coldly snorted and declined to comment. "If I eliminate you, then how grateful would the competitors in the roaming dragon list ought to be to me? Wouldn't you agree?" Su Luo happily smiled as she looked at him. "Eliminate me?" Li Chiron finally spoke, but his tone was as if he had heard a fantasy story. "These years, adding together the people you have killed, must be close to 1,000. Killing you is proper and to be expected." Su Luo raised her eyebrows with a ghost of a smile. "Want to kill me?" "Ha ha ha." Li Chiron was first in disbelief and soon afterwards laughingly sneered, "Ha ha." But his laughter still hadn't finished before he felt a trace of strangeness. He already couldn't see Su Luo, who was in front of him. Substituting in her place was an old man with white hair and beard, emitting the aura of an exceptionally strong expert. Li Chiron's mouth looked as if a large egg was stuffed in it. In an instant, he became lifeless. This person in front of him wasn't someone else. It was precisely the little stone draped in elder ancestor Mo. In fact, the little stone had requested this battle himself. Ever since he entered elder ancestor Mo's body, after going through repeated breaking in, he finally adapted to this body's tempo. Everything else was about ready, but he was unable to grasp the fighting strength. But elder ancestor Mo's strength was too powerful. He couldn't find a person to experiment on. But now, it just so happened that a dim-witted Li Chiron had gathered close by chance, so, no matter what, he couldn't let him slip. Sensing the powerful, killing, murderous aura in front, Li Chiron entered a state of being on guard in a split second. Li Chiron was most well known for his sword all over the fighting world. His sword was very quick. Rumors from people in the world was that when Li Chiron killed a person, his sword would make one pass, and only after he had walked far away would the person who was killed feel the pain. This speed ought to be fast to what degree? Probably only the people who were being killed knew. Now Li Chiron's sword was like in the past, quickly attacking towards elder ancestor Mo. Li Chiron didn't recognize that the person in front of him was Central Palace's elder ancestor, but he could feel that the other side was strong. Therefore, his first move absolutely wasn't just a probe, and he directly used all his strength. Chapter 1398, getting things done once and for all, for his speed was too slow. This was how Little Stone felt when he saw Li Qiuran's sword thrust over. That speed of Li Qiuran's that was boasted to be so brilliant at this moment in the Little Stone's eyes, it looked like a replay in slow motion. Too slow. The Little Stone's soul was already originally very strong. What he lacked was a strong physical body. Elder Ancestor Mo's body was powerful enough, so with the two combined, each getting what one was good at, the result was extremely astonishing. The sword thrust over at lightning speed, but the Little Stone didn't move. Just when the sword point was about to pierce between his eyebrows, one only heard a clang sound. The Little Stone's pair of hand was as amazing as Lu Xiaofeng's sensitive fingers, firmly wedging the sword point between his fingers. A trace of astonishment flashed through Li Qiuran's eyes. He was usually intensely proud of his sword skills. Now it was actually sandwiched like this. Moreover, this was still under the circumstances in which he used his complete strength. Li Qiuran's usually indifferent pitch-black eyes, for the first time, a trace of franticness of being at one's wit's end flashed through them. However, his instinct as a killer made him quickly focus his mind to try and snatch his sword back. Li Qiuran made a mistake. If at this time he had turned around and ran, perhaps Little Stone would give him a chance to live. But he didn't make the prompt decision to leave. The corner of Little Stone's mouth raised in an extremely sinister sneer. He slowly spit out two words, "Court death." Li Qiuran's strength was pretty good, so with this move, Little Stone used all the strength he could use and held nothing back. Just in this split second, the sword exploded and changed into a white aura. Go! The sinister cold in Little Stone's eyes glowed hotter. The white aura was like floating snowflakes, completely entering Li Qiuran's body. At this moment, Li Qiuran was stunned. He foolishly looked at his own motionless body. He wanted to run, but the soles of his feet seemed to be fixed in place, and he couldn't move the slightest. He could only look on helplessly as those killing weapons, without holding back, completely entered his body. In the end, Li Qiuran could only blankly look at his own body, then it slowly fell, finally dying with remaining grievance. Until death, his eyes were still open very wide, very wide. The corner of the Little Stone's mouth raised in a bloody sneer. "Remember my name, Mo Chonglu?" Finished speaking these words, Li Qiuran died with even more remaining grievances. At this moment, the Little Stone's gaze swept over his surroundings. This time, not only Li Qiuran surrounded Su Luo, actually, countless strong experts were hiding in dark corners. But because Li Qiuran made a move, so they all hid motionlessly. At this moment, receiving the Little Stone's gaze, these people kept quiet completely out of fear, not daring to breathe. Each and every one of them lowered their eyes in succession, fearing to meet this strong, powerful old man's eyes, so strong as to defy the natural order. Su Luo heard the gasping sounds with satisfaction. What the Little Stone did was not bad. He deliberately didn't kill these people to let them spread this news. At that time, everyone would know that Su Luo had Elder Ancestor Mo's protection, so no one would dare look for her. Elder Ancestor Mo got into the carriage, and the dragon-scaled horse broke out in whinnies that alarmed the heavens. He provocatively swept the surroundings, then let his four hooves loose and galloped away. Seeing the dragon-scaled horse gallop away, those people that were hiding in the dark slowly released their breaths. That pressure just now truly scared them to death. They thought that when that old man raised his long sleeves, they would all have been annihilated. Wait a minute, just now, did he say his name was Mo Chonglu? Mo Chonglu, such a familiar name. Lu Xiaofeng. He is a fictional character from wuxia novel by Gu Long. Lots of TV shows and movies were made from Gu Long's novel about Lu Xiaofeng. Chapter 1399, getting things done once and for all. 5. Central Palace's elder ancestor's name seems to be Mo Chonglu. One of them cried out in alarm. Once these words came out, everyone was completely shocked still. Can't be right? Central Palace's elder ancestor is following Su Luo at her side to protect her? This fact really made people despair. Protecting? You wish it was that good. For certain, he fancies Su Luo's blood, raising her. Otherwise, you think the Grand Central Palace's elder ancestor would stoop below his exalted status and stay by a little fifth-rank side? Then regardless, Su Luo's blood, all of us won't have a chance at all, right? Even all of us combined aren't enough for him to kill with one move. Wouldn't you say? Let's leave, let's leave. Disperse, disperse. Thus, from this day on, the news that elder ancestor Mo was at Su Luo's side spread through the entire capital. Thus, from this day forward, no one dared to brazenly stop Su Luo wanting her blood again. Because the solitary guest Li Qiuran, the Li Qiuran who was second place on the bounty list, didn't get past one move from ancestor Mo. Those who do not want to live can go try it. Ever since Central Palace got this news, Palace Master Mo was so happy that he grinned from ear to ear all day long. So pleased that he played Go with First Elder every day. Elder Ancestor Mo's mind had already recovered. Moreover, it seemed his strength also had huge progress. How could he not be happy? But recalling everything related to Central Palace being destroyed, Palace Master Mo gnashed his teeth in rage. If he was to know who stole the mysterious spirit fruit and who robbed the treasure storage pavilion, he definitely would exterminate the other side's entire clan and make them forever unable to change their fates. How could the pitiful Palace Master Mo know? The person who stole the mysterious spirit fruit and robbed the treasure storage pavilion was simply the same person. Moreover, this person not only stole the mysterious spirit fruit and robbed the treasure storage pavilion, she also made him lose his dad. Su Luo, the dragon-scaled horse, carried the party of people and left. He hadn't gone 100 meters when the little stone's body swayed. Su Luo immediately inquired with deep concern. What happened? It wouldn't be that something went wrong, right? Humph humph, your grandpa stone could have something go wrong? Worried for nothing. The little stone carelessly waved his hands. But you're bleeding. Su Luo pointed at the corner of his mouth. Just now, she saw the little stone win so easily. With one move, Li Qiuran was exterminated. But now it seemed that it might not have been that easy. Too much supplements, okay? The little stone indifferently wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth. The corner of Su Luo's lips twitched speechlessly. At that time, elder ancestor Mo drank so much of her blood, and it wasn't too much supplement. Now, how could it be too much supplement? Clearly, he still hadn't broken in this body properly. Just now, that move of his was too sudden. Su Luo did not wait for him to speak. She directly waved her hand and placed the little stone into her space. The spirit aura in her space was rich and a big help to cultivation. After the variant red acacia tree turned into a spirit-gathering tree, the spirit aura became increasingly pure and concentrated. Only, it's a pity that apart from the spirit pets and spirit plants that were contracted to her, other people couldn't enter. After Su Luo placed the little stone in, the little stone also didn't protest. He only grumbled a few times and then returned to his old chassis, sat cross-legged, and continued to break in this body. In fact, Su Luo hadn't guessed wrongly. The little stone had really overdone it, almost making his soul fly out. Fortunately, he was more scared than hurt and was finally able to forcibly suppress it. The little stone gloomily swatted his own head, talking to himself. You're not a child to get so excited over personally going to fight. Don't even understand to have a little bit of control. Finished mumbling these sentences, the little stone shook his head and immediately closed his eyes, entering into deep cultivation. Don't know which day he would awaken. Su Luo and Nangong Luyun returned to southern mountains, unimpeded and with no obstruction the whole journey long. Chapter 1400, Getting Things Done Once and for All 6. After knowing Ancestor Mo was protecting Su Luo, Su Zian was very unresigned. He looked at Madame Su and Su Jingyu who were laying on the bed, and his eyes shone with sinister light. No matter what, they were all living in the same manner before now. Su Luo's blood could save them. She wouldn't refuse, right? Therefore, Su Zian made another trip to the southern mountains. But this time, not only didn't he get to see Su Luo, he was even scolded by the gatekeeper, and ended up getting nothing. Su Zian was unreconciled. He shouted and yelled outside the gates, cursing Su Luo as cruel and unscrupulous. How could she watch her own mother and older brother die and not save them? It was only a drop of blood. What was so hard about that? His Highness Prince Jean instructed one sentence, and immediately, Su Zian was tossed down the mountain. If you don't want to live, just say it directly. Don't be so reserved. This was what housekeeper Li had told Su Zian at that time. Su Zian was so angry. His anger almost soared to the sky. Su Luo's blood and bones were all given by him. Now, he just wanted one drop of her blood, and it was this difficult. Su Zian's heart was full of a towering rage. But recalling that at Su Luo's side was Ancestor Mo and His Highness Prince Jean, these two great Buddhas to protect her, he could only grit his teeth and swallow this resentment. He could only look forward to this time's roaming dragon list competition and Su Luo going to fiercely take a tumble, falling to the point of being half dead. Then his anger would have been vented. However, don't know how Su Zian did it. At the least, he spread the fact that she didn't even give a drop of blood to save her own dying mother and older brother to be known to everyone. Southern Mountains. Zian ran over in a rage. Su Zian is simply courting death. He actually slandered you like this. Zian waved her long sword. With one swing of her sword, suddenly, the rock garden ahead, with a loud rumble, collapsed. In the gallery, Su Luo calmly held a cup of tea. Her right hand used the lid to push away the tea leaves, not even lifting her eyelids. You are not even a bit angry? After Zian was done venting, she ran up to Su Luo and asked in a fuming manner, "Aren't you being angry for me?" Su Luo said with a face full of puzzlement. "Alas, I say, how can you be so calm? You don't know how bad the rumors about you have reached outside." Zian was stamping her feet from anger. Just now, she was so unbearably angry. With a swing of her sword, she chopped off the waistbands of all those who were talking nonsense. Those guys were too busy protecting their bodies below that they dared not talk nonsense anymore. You have a mouth, besides eating, it's for talking as well. Can you really stop it? But you should not tolerate them spouting nonsense. In fact, I really am watching them die, not saving them. Su Luo spread open her hands and said as if it didn't matter. But Su Zian is not your real dad. Those damned not wanting to live people before were always thinking of ways to scheme against you. Now, Su Zian is using public opinion to pressure you. Su Luo placed the teacup down leisurely and, with a ghost of a smile, said, "How is it that I smell Li Yao Yao's scent?" Li Yao Yao. Mentioning Li Yao Yao, Zian was so angry that she shook all over. Su Luo had to face so many dangers on the way. Weren't they all caused by Li Yao Yao? That slut? If she hadn't spread the news that Su Luo had spirit blood, they wouldn't have these problems now. Speaking of this, Li Yao Yao was the main culprit. Yes, Li Yao Yao. Su Zian might want to do it, but the Su family didn't have this kind of strength. This matter had Jade Lakesley family's mark all over it. This time's roaming dragon list competition, the Jade Lakesley family doesn't have any participants, right? Su Luo's eyebrows rose with her smile. Li Aoqiong and Li Aoyin both perished in her hands. The Jade Lakesley family's future was very bleak. Chapter 1401, Getting Things Done Once and for All 7. This time you guessed wrong. Ziyan's red lips unhappily muttered. Oh, how so? Su Luo was full of interest as she asked. Li Aoqiong and Li Aoyin are truly talented, but Li Aoqiong only has the strength of a 4th rank now and will be like this for a lifetime. As for Li Aoyin, even now, no one has seen him alive, and if dead, no one has seen his body. Everyone thinks he is already dead. Ziyin said. Su Luo nodded. Li Aoyin is indeed dead. You're sure? Ziyin cried out in surprise. Very sure. Su Luo's smile hid a deep, profound meaning. So it was you guys? Ziyin suddenly felt speechless. There were still bets set up in gambling houses, betting on if Li Aoyin was alive or dead. Didn't expect that he was long dead. Su Luo smiled. After Ziyin was done being rueful, she went back to the main subject. That's right, we were talking about Li Yaoyao's family's 3rd generation. I have no choice but to say that this Li Yaoyuan's luck is really good. At that time, he had a love child on the outside, but no one expected that this love child was extraordinarily gifted. Even Li Aoqiong and Li Aoyin were not good enough to flatter him. Oh, a love child? Su Luo frowned slightly. Li Aoqiong and Li Aoyin's strength was not bad. Now, they were not good enough to flatter him. How amazing would he be? A love child raised outside. Should have some contradiction with the family, right? Su Luo didn't think that the love child would have much yearning for Jade Lakesley family. Moody feelings towards the family can hardly be avoided. However, Jade Lakesley family's 3rd generation either died or were ruined. There's basically no qualified successor. So this time, Li Yaoyuan put forth huge sincerity to ask this love child to return to Jade Lake Palace. When Ziyin set up to hear, she sighed with ruefulness. So the love child just returned like that. Su Luo laughed indifferently. Is his mother still alive? I just knew you were smart. Ziyin giggled. His mother is still alive, as beautiful as before. That love child wants his mother to become the legal first wife, and wants Li Yaoyuan to make a public announcement. Then what about Li Yaoyao's mother? Su Luo blinked her eyes curiously. That lady, I heard, had already entered the family hall of worship. Ziyin blinked her eyes while she gossiped. I heard Li Yaoyao was about to go insane from anger. Finally, she cried as if she was about to die. But Palace Master Li ignored her. Alas, who told this lady to have such bad luck? Originally, she gave birth to 3 kids. The oldest son was a genius, who eventually insulted this person called Su Luo. In the end, they either died or got ruined. None of them had a happy ending. Hey, wait a minute. Su Luo grasped the important part of this long speech. Li Yaoyao, you said? Could it be that I haven't told you? Ziyin patted her head in bewilderment. You didn't say anything. Su Luo patted her shoulder. Youngster, did you forget some really important news? Li Yaoyao's cultivation was wasted. Moreover, she will never be able to cultivate again. Does this count as important news? So that's how it is. Su Luo sucked in a cold breath of air. At that time, she watched as Nangong made the move. She was also puzzled. Under these circumstances, how was Li Yaoyao able to escape? It seemed that even though she escaped back then, her body's functions were all destroyed. That's right. Afterwards, Li Yaoyao agreed to making the love child's mother the legal wife, with one condition. Could it be related to me? Su Luo pointed at her own nose. It really is related to you. Do you know? That love child comes with a mission to kill you. This was Li Yaoyao's idea. Chapter 1402. Getting things done once and for all. 8. Ziyin was completely speechless. On the fighting stage, with swords flying around, life and death are ruled by fate. So, it's the perfect justified opportunity to kill you. Luo, that love child is really strong. Maybe you ought to think about withdrawing from the competition? Withdraw from the competition? Su Luo, would really go do something so embarrassing? Su Luo didn't consider this at all. Instead, she curiously asked, After talking for so long, what is that love child called? Liaochen. Ziyin sighed and said faintly. Su Luo frowned. It seems as if I haven't heard about a man called that among the cultivators on the continent. Yes, but Beichen has already gone to probe him. Even he couldn't beat this Liaochen. Beichen did his best, and still wasn't able to get him to use his special skills. Ziyin looked at Su Luo's eyes and said in an extremely serious manner. After Beichen Ing learned about Liaochen's existence, he went there on the spot. A pity that he had to return after such a crushing defeat, but he brought back a lot of valuable information. Sorry to have bothered Beichen. This child, alas. Su Luo was very clear of his thoughts. However, she only could pray Beichen wouldn't be so good to her, and quickly shift his gaze to this mist that was in front of her eyes. So, you really won't consider withdrawing from the competition? Ziyin asked seriously for the last time. No matter how amazing Liaochen is, could he be as strong as Ancestor Mo? Su Luo smiled calmly, her eyes carrying an arrogant disdain for the world. Really need to compare to the end. Humph, humph. Ziyin suddenly laughed out loud. If you let Ancestor Mo come out on the battle stage, at that time, Central Palace might go insane. Letting Ancestor Mo out would mean that Ancestor Mo had already become Su Luo's puppet. It'd be strange if Central Palace didn't go after Su Luo at all costs. We'll talk about it when the time comes. Su Luo smiled faintly, but she had already remembered a name by heart. His name was Liaochen. Don't know if he would follow in Liaoqiong and Liaoyin's footsteps. Su Luo was full of expectations. Time passed little by little. If one was to ask what was the hottest topic in the imperial capital right now, a lot of people would blurt out, Roaming Dragon List Competition. That's right, Roaming Dragon List Competition. The Roaming Dragon List ranking competition happened only every 10 years. The entire capital was full of excitement. This year just so happened to be Eastern Ling's turn to host it. Compared to the liveliness outside, Eastern Ling's imperial palace was shrouded in a layer of shadows. Emperor Jing had his hands behind his back, anxiously pacing back and forth in a side palace hall. At this time, the imperial study was being repaired, so Emperor Jing's work was moved to a side hall. There's still no news about Grandmaster Rongyin? Emperor Jing walked around agitated and raised his head to bellow. A few capable attendants were kneeling in front of him. These people were dressed in black. They were all shadow guards trained in secret by the imperial family, specifically to protect the emperor, as well as running errands and taking care of the emperor's personal matters. Seeing that the competition was about to start soon, yet there was no trace of Grandmaster Rongyun, Emperor Jing's heart was very anxious. Where was the logic in having a competition begin and the head judge hadn't arrived yet? Wasn't this the rhythm of opening the window to find that the inside was empty? Emperor Jing couldn't find the powerful forces within his court, so he simply just sent out his shadow guards. However, the shadow guards also returned in low spirits without any success. Did the people sent to the southern mountains return? Emperor Jing asked in annoyance. Replying to your majesty, Miss Su didn't say anything. She only said that when the time comes, her master will return. The shadow guard said in a low voice. What else did she say? Emperor Jing impatiently grunted. She also said, if he didn't return, you could only delay the event. Because the place where her master went, even if we know where it is not a place as common people can go. Chapter 1403, Roaming Dragon List 1. Enough. Emperor Jing panted in a rage and waved his hand. Postpone. The Roaming Dragon List contest had happened so many times throughout history, but it was never postponed. Why was it that when it was Eastern Ling's turn, it would be so troublesome? Emperor Jing had thought of changing the judge, but when he asked the other powerful families, those heads of families, the powerful characters, all weren't at home. So, Emperor Jing could only wait. Fortunately, Grandmaster Rong Yun always kept his word. The day before the competition, after finally arriving slowly, it's time for the roaming dragon list feast to start. Southern Mountains. When Su Luo saw Grandmaster Rong Yun, happiness showed up in her eyes. She pursed her lips into a smile. Master, you finally came back. If you hadn't, Uncle Nangong would have dispatched people to kidnap me. Grandmaster Rong Yun was dressed all in white, his long body slim and graceful. His face was like the mid-autumn moon, gentle as jade, elegant as chrysanthemum. His noble, refined taste simply made people suffocate. But this slim figure actually had the strength to stand at the peak among humans. Grandmaster Rong Yun looked at Su Luo and smiled faintly. In a gentle and low voice, he asked, "Is your body completely healed?" His always said it in an even manner that was gentle and indolent. The tone was indescribably pleasant-sounding. Su Luo ran up to him and grabbed his arm. Bringing up her right wrist, she giggled and said, "Master, you have a look for yourself if I'm healed or not." Grandmaster Rong Yun cast a sideways glance at Su Luo. His pitch-black eyes were like the thick brush strokes in an ink painting, and nodded slightly. "Recovery is not bad. Really a delicious piece of sweet-scented fat meat." Grandmaster Rong Yun pinched Su Luo's protruding cheeks and turned his lips up slightly in a spoiling smile. Rong Yun didn't smile much, but when he smiled, it gave off a gentle beauty, with no adjectives in the world to describe it. Simply beautiful enough to make people foolish. Su Luo just looked at him with stupefied eyes. In the end, she was lifted away by Nangong Liyun. Nangong Liyun's arms extended out and put Su Luo behind him. He then cast a sidelong glance at Grandmaster Rong Yun. Grandmaster is worthy of the title. Coming so late and still having the time for small talk here. Nangong Liyun. Su Luo pulled at his sleeve secretly. How could he be so rude to Master? Nangong Liyun let Su Luo pull on his sleeve until it almost broke off and still didn't look at her. Only, his face became more overcast. The corner of Grandmaster Rong Yun's mouth gracefully raised. His thin, long fingers hooked towards Su Luo. "Come to your master's side." Master gave an order. Disciple wouldn't dare disobey. Therefore, Su Luo pushed Nangong Liyun aside and eagerly ran to Grandmaster Rong Yun's side. This side, Nangong Liyun couldn't pull her back, and his face immediately became black as the ash at the bottom of a pot, so heavy that water could almost drip out. His pitch-black hair, which fell downwards, now stood up straight by the roots. His hands firmly clenched into fists, emitting bone-cracking sounds. On the other side, Grandmaster Rong Yun led Su Luo and talked as if no one else was present. He was just that beautiful. Every movement was highly elegant, graceful to the extreme. His strength was unfathomable, making people's heart feel uncertain. Su Luo didn't notice Nangong Liyun's black pot-like face. Right now, she and her master sat on a soft couch side by side, softly and smilingly telling him what happened. Master always had a stern face before, so Su Luo was used to his cold detachment. Suddenly, Master became so amiable, Su Luo naturally wanted to grab this opportunity. Now, Su Luo's speech was exultant and full of vigor. Compared to Nangong Liyun's ashen and angry face, the difference was very obvious. Finally, Grandmaster Rong Yun pinched Su Luo's small arms and furrowed his beautiful eyebrows. Still such little strength. Chapter 1404, Roaming Dragon List 2. Master, you should feel assured that having Ancestor Mo, this super strong bodyguard, nothing will happen. Su Luo patted her little chest confidently and said as if by right, "What if several ancestors from prominent families all come together?" Rong Yun's eyes shone like obsidian. "That won't happen, right?" Su Luo immediately thought of a huge problem. Even Master has returned. Then, those several ancestors that left with him, did they all come back as well? They all came back. As if Grandmaster Rong Yun knew what Su Luo was thinking, he directly gave her an accurate answer. Then, Su Luo wanted to say that they shouldn't have any interest in her blood, right? But remembering Ancestor Mo, Su Luo kept silent. After Ancestor Mo went mad, he kept pursuing her based on pure instinct. How could those elder ancestors not be interested? What was she to do? Grandmaster Rong Yun tapped Su Luo's forehead. If we were to wait for you to come up with an idea, 10 of you would have been killed already. Master has already solved this problem? Su Luo's eyes shone immediately. Master's rank was simply on a completely different level than she was. One ancestor, Mo, chased her to be killed until she had nowhere else to run, and she almost died tragically on the spot. In the end, it was with Nangong Liuyun's help that they both managed to stay alive. As for Master's solution, looking at his mysterious and enigmatic appearance, Su Luo knew that he wouldn't tell her. Su Luo seized this chance and told him about the matter of Northern Mo's third princess. When he heard she was a light and ice system dual-element mage, Grandmaster Rong Yun was somewhat surprised, then patted Su Luo's head immediately. You did good. Su Luo immediately felt very pleased from the praise. When she was on Cloud Mist Peak, no matter how good she did, Master merely gave a grunt in acknowledgement. Now, she received a third princess, and he actually unprecedentedly praised her. Su Luo thought that her master had changed to be a lot cuter than before. Just when the master and apprentice were having a good long conversation, being all warm and affectionate, one figure walked up with his slender legs, taking steady steps. His whole body emitting rage. Like an Azura from hell, his expression was gloomy, and his eyes shone with cold light. Nangong Luyun. Su Luo found the time to glance at him. Why was he so angry? Who provoked him? Nangong Luyun, in one move, picked Su Luo up and snorted coldly. The day is not early anymore. Let's go home and sleep. Su Luo's wrist that he was pulling hurt a lot, and her brows wrinkled tightly. But she also knew you mustn't agitate him when he was angry, otherwise it would go from bad to worse, and the consequences would not be so easy to clean up. So, Su Luo looked at him calmly. What's up with you? Seeing the couple that was about to quarrel, Grandmaster Rong Yun put his fist in front of his lips to cover the smile that appeared on his lips briefly. He cleared his throat and stood up and handed a small brocade box to Su Luo. Put this away properly. This is... Su Luo hadn't finished her question when she felt something stirring in the space, crying excitedly, asking to accept this thing quickly. It's a mere plaything. Accept it. Don't tell anyone outside. Grandmaster Rong Yun gently stroked Su Luo's hair. The day is not early anymore. Come, return with your master. This time, Su Luo was in a difficult position. Should she return with her master? Or should she prioritize appeasing Nangong Luyun first? If she dared to pledge, if she just followed master like this, Nangong Luyun would definitely get furious to the point of hopping mad. The last time he was angry, he demolished a mountain. Don't know what he'll do this time. Now, Nangong Luyun's face was very ugly. Chapter 1405. Roaming Dragon List 3. He pulled at Su Luo's hand, and the strength he used was about to break Su Luo's wrist. Su Luo glanced back and saw Nangong Luyun's lower jawline that was stretched taut, coldly arrogant like a nobleman. In that spoiled and strong, domineering aura, it had a thread of apprehensiveness and nervousness. In that moment, Su Luo's heart softened. Master, all of my things are here. Moving them back and forth is too troublesome. It's better if I stayed here, Su Luo said worriedly. That apprehensive little appearance was like a schoolgirl being caught by her father after staying out overnight. Nangong Luyun's hand clearly relaxed slightly. But Grandmaster Rong Yun's face immediately sank down. His pitch-black and arrogant eyes seemed to shoot lightning towards Nangong Luyun. That pair of malicious eyes carried a thread of sternness. If one's cultivation was slightly weaker, perhaps the person would be scared to the point of their soul leaving the body. At this time, Nangong Luyun met that pair of murderous black eyes without showing any weakness. Two strong experts were facing each other. Two murderous auras collided. Grandmaster Rong Yun always seemed wealthy, warm, and beautifully elegant. Nangong Luyun was demonically charming and gloomy, courageous, ruthless, and spicy. Under Grandmaster Rong Yun's ice-cold pond like murderous aura, although Nangong Luyun felt the extreme pressure, he wouldn't take a step back, arrogantly standing in place. Not bad. Grandmaster Rong Yun gave a gloomy snort. He very rarely praised people. Nangong Luyun being able to get a single praise, it could be seen how amazing he was. I will, with all speed, marry Luo Luo over. This was Nangong Luyun's promise as a man. However, Rong Yun's sharp and deep eyes swept past them once and frowned. You guys cannot get married for the time being. Why? Nangong Luyun gave off a sharp, gloomy aura. He embraced Su Luo on one hand, with a very displeased expression on the other hand. He originally thought Grandmaster Rong Yun blamed him for living together with her and not giving her the status, but it turned out that wasn't it? Marrying Luo Luo was what Nangong Luyun longed for now, being thwarted by a person without reason. How could he be happy? This time's roaming dragon list competition, Grandmaster Rong Yun paused and cleared his throat. If you can get first place, then you will have an opportunity to marry our family's Luo Luo. Only after getting first place on roaming dragon list would he get a chance. Then, when would he really be able to marry her? Nangong Luyun's face had turned stiff. Why is that? The fierce spirit aura on Nangong Luyun's body pressed out like a storm in the mountains. If you want to protect Luo Luo, then you'll act according to orders. Grandmaster Rong Yun gave a cold snort. Wanting to marry his family's Luo Luo. How could it be that he wanted to marry and could marry? Having automatically taken up a father's role, Grandmaster Rong Yun was a bit jealous. As long as I get first place, I can marry Luo Luo, right? Nangong Luyun suddenly smiled devilishly. His smile was crafty and sinful, ferocious and threatening. Based on your strength, is getting first place that hard? Rong Yun snorted unhappily. At the same time that you get first place, you must ensure Luo Luo gets second place. Puff Su Luo, who remained silent by the side, couldn't bear it anymore. If before, Bei Qining didn't tell her, she could still hope wildly. But after Bei Qining told her about those people, the only thing remaining in Su Luo's heart was despair. Second place? Master, you are not mistaken, right? Nangong gets first place, and I get second? Then what about Luo Haoming and Yexing and so forth? Where did you place them? Su Luo was about to cry. According to Bei Qing's meaning, they were at the 10th level 10 years ago. Only heaven knows to how terrifying a degree they had grown into now. Her family's master actually was the head judge, but even a head judge couldn't make blind calls with his eyes open, right? Chapter 1406, Roaming Dragon List 4. Master Rong Yun lazily used his knuckles to knock on Su Luo's head. Do you really want to get married this hastily? Definitely not. Su Luo dared to swear to this. She really wasn't hurrying. Okay, now her current body was only 17 years old. Getting married at 17 was too early. Okay. Luo Luo. Nangong Luyun's face became dark once again. Therefore, whether you guys get married must be decided by yourselves. Rong Yun stood up with his hands clasped behind him, letting the wind blow on his charming robe, every movement appearing natural and extraordinary. After the roaming dragon list is over, we'll get married? Nangong Luyun was persistent. It could be said he could discern one of the conditions from Master Rong Yun and those few important people's discussion. It was for him to get first place. What annoyed Nangong Luyun was that he could feel faintly that Grandmaster Rong Yun was impeding him. If he wanted to marry Luo Luo and make her Princess Jean, then he'd have to withstand many more difficulties. Also, he didn't know what kind of crazy medicine that foolish girl ate. She actually dared to say she firmly hadn't thought of getting married. Nangong Liyun's whole body gave off an ice-cold, angry aura. His pair of eyes was cold and bloodthirsty, clearly extremely displeased. Leaving aside the matter of marrying Luo Luo, if you can't get first place this time, and Luo Luo can't get second, Luo Luo will have to worry about her life. Rong Yun's eyes gave off a deep, meaningful warning. Nangong Liyun was more worried about Su Luo's life than anybody else, and he ridiculously laughed. It seems this matter, even if I don't agree, I will have to agree. When had Nangong Liyun ever been subjected to people's threats? But, tell me the reason. Nangong Liyun's eyes were full of rage. This time, Grandmaster Rong Yun did not keep it from him. His lips moved slightly, as if he said something, but he didn't make any sound. Su Luo stood between the two, and she couldn't hear it at all. But Nangong Liyun on her right-hand side seemed to have heard everything clearly. His expression darkened for a split second. In the end, what was the secret? Su Luo looked left then right in distress. These two men, one with profoundly mysterious strength, one with endlessly broad potential, but equally prudent in speech. Although Master used secret language to pass on words, then she must be kept completely in the dark. She was really very curious. Nangong Liyun pulled Su Luo and directly turned to walk away. His tall and straight handsome shadow dragged very long in the moonlight. His black hair danced in the night breeze, making him look even more devilish and ruthless. He led Su Luo without slowing down at all. Su Luo carried a belly full of doubts and puzzlement, being dragged by him until she became unsteady. She didn't have any choice and had to hurriedly wave to Master. Grandmaster Rong Yun smiled gently and watched them leave. Waiting until they were further away, Grandmaster Rong Yun lifted his eyes to look at the moon in the sky. Moonlight fell down, but his body was like obsidian that could gather the brilliance for a second. He seemed so beautiful as to make people dizzy. Only, that tall figure carried a bit of loneliness and desolation. Grandmaster Rong Yun heaved a deep sigh. Extraordinary and uncommonly gifted, inherent responsibility. Alas, the road ahead will be even more difficult. Speaking this, Grandmaster Rong Yun waved his hand. His handsome figure gradually went further away and disappeared among the dark mountain range. Nangong Liyun brought Su Luo back. Su Luo naturally, at the first moment, asked what Master told him. But Nangong Liyun's lips were harder than mysterious black metal. No matter how Su Luo asked, he didn't let half a word slip, only yearningly stroked her head. Cultivate well, and obediently cultivate, okay. Yeah, right my ass? Su Luo gloomily gave him a kick. Thought you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.